Hey, we're live. We're live.
Oh my gosh, we're live. Shit, I gotta.
We're live. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah. No. What? In this audio, you don't need to close.
Oh,
just let it hang. Just let it hang. Go away, Baton.
Right. Go away, Peyton. That prophetic movie.
Anyway, I'll tell the story again as I just told it to you before we started broadcasting.
Yes.
Yeah. So I and when you came on, I was listening to Typo Negative because 'tis the season.
Yes,
And yeah. So Typo Negative is one of the few bands I've seen live. I'm just not a big concert person.
Mm-hmm.
But back in 96 or 97, their heyday, I suppose you could say.
Sure.
I went to go see them live at the Lost Horizon in Syracuse, New York. I don't even know if that place still exists. It was a total dive bar, and that was just a crazy good show. And Pete Steele, the lead singer of Typo Negative, so tall that his head was hitting the ceiling of the band of the stage while they were playing. And one of the things I will never forget is they were playing. So anybody's not familiar with Typo Negative, they had a string of hits in the 90s. They were a goth metal band, kind of like I guess the best way to describe them is a really slow Misfits.
Sure.
Pete Steele, they were getting ready to play My Girlfriend's Girlfriend, which was a huge hit for them. And he's like, yeah, thanks everybody for because of this song, I was able to re-drywall my house. Anyway, here's here's my girlfriend's girlfriend.
That's great. That's such an honest statement.
It really is.
Like that.
It's just and I'm sad because he passed away.
Yeah.
God, it had to be 10 years ago now.
It's been a while. It's been a spell.
So
I looked up Lost Horizon too, by the way, and they are still, in fact, in business in Syracuse, New York.
Wow.
Their Monster Mash Halloween show coming up.
No kidding.
Bands like Murder in Rue Morgue, The Last Divide, and Breath of the Valkyrie.
So they've downgraded a bit, is what you're saying.
Maybe, yeah. But those are cool band names, though. I'll give them that.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a dive bar. That was a real dive bar. Just random. I mean, random memories from that show is I remember there was the backstage area, or I should say, kind of where you can see the band from the side.
Okay. Yeah.
They had that kind of divided off with just they stood up some fucking folding tables, and that was the divider.
Yep.
And my friend Garrett and I were standing there, and one of the security guards looked at us, and we were smoking cigarettes at the time.
Yeah.
And security guards looked at us, and he's like, "Hey, you guys got to smoke?" And my friend Garrett, he didn't mean to do this, but he had a pack of Marlboro Reds, and he meant to just take one out, but he accidentally dumped the whole fucking pack in the guy's hands. And the dude looked like it was Christmas, and he was like, "Yeah, you're back here now." And he grabbed him and he dragged him over the barrier.
Nice.
So the whole rest of the show, and I told the guy, I was like, "Hey, it's my best friend. Come on, let me go back there." And the whole rest of the guy's like, "No, sorry." And the whole rest of the show,
oh my gosh,
I have to sit there and watch my friend Garrett smoking cigarettes, trying to look cool, watching the band from the side. I'm like, "You son of a bitch!"
Right. Trying to look cool.
And then so he stands there the whole time. And then as the band goes off the stage, they walk right past him, and he does the low high five to everybody. And I'm like, "You son of a bitch!"
It's like, oh, it was so worth it.
Yeah. Well, the other member too is that before the show, the band was signing stuff, and I just had a baseball cap that I just got for free, and it was a Georgetown baseball cap, and I gave it to him. And I remember vividly. I remember vividly. Pete Steele looks at me. He looks at the hat, and he looks at me, and he goes, "You're gonna get your ass kicked wearing this around here." Syracuse and Georgetown, I guess it's a big rivalry. And I was like, "Cool, whatever, man. Just on the wrong hat." So yeah.
That's awesome. I like that he so they must be, I don't know a ton about Typo Negative. I mostly just I fire them up around every Halloween, man, because Black Number One is kind of like one of the anthems that they would play on the local rock station where I lived in Northeast Wisconsin. So every Halloween without fail, not even Halloween, just in October they'll play it for that month, right? And I know some of their other catalog and stuff, but I'm not a massive fan or anything like that. But I love that goddamn song every October.
Yeah, it's a great song, and the album version is 14 minutes long or something insane.
Oh, I know. I much prefer the radio cut. I heard the album version. They were actually playing that on Sirius XM the other day, and I'd heard the album version before, and I'm aware of how long it was. And as soon as one of the sections was drawn out a little bit longer. I was like, oh shit, this is the hella long version of the song.
This is the Rush version of the song.
Yeah.
Yeah. Random fun memories.
Yeah, we should talk in another episode.
It's what the show's all about, really, when you get down to it. It's just about us having memories.
We're supposed to be vaguely metal themed here, so yeah, it's very fitting. It's very appropriate. God knows we could spend probably a whole other episode talking about stories about bands and music and stuff. So.
Oh God, yeah. Especially, I mean, especially growing up in the '90s, and I was. I mean, you obviously were very into metal.
Mm-hmm.
I was very into punk. Well, I should say I was very into ska, and then ska was my gateway drug into punk, and I kind of went down that path. And I never got into the pop punk stuff like Blink-182, Green Day. That I was never interested in that, and it just kind of went down this path of like going all the way back to the Sex Pistols. And
sure, oh, that's awesome, man. That's cool. I feel like anytime you can, follow that rabbit hole, so to speak, and like end up in this whole new world of music and stuff, it's just the best. I've done that. Yeah. I mean, like when shit, and here we are talking about music now, and it's supposed to be our horror episode, but really quick, man, when the electronica like invasion from Europe came over to the States in the 90s.
Oh yeah, big time.
That opened up my whole world. So yeah, that was cool. But
well, to this day, one of my favorite bands is still The Prodigy.
Oh yeah, they're awesome, man.
Yeah, they are. And they have a new album dropping in just a few weeks, I think.
Yeah, it's coming soon.
Yeah, and one of their greatest albums. I mean, obviously, everybody remembers them for Firestarter and Smack My Bitch Up.
Yeah,
but one of their absolute best albums, top to bottom, just I can play it and just listen to the whole damn thing. Is Invaders Must Die, which came out I think in 2006 or 7.
Mm-hmm.
Man, what a great album! Just fantastic.
Oh yeah, dude. Somebody at Sony really loves that album because Invaders Must Die was in the latest Wipeout game that they put out on PS4. And then before that, there was like some Little Big Planet promo stuff. And this was like late 2008 or 9 or something like that. It was one of the Little Big Planet games. There was promo material where they used that song.
Well, and the original trailer, the original trailer for Duke Nukem Forever was Invaders Must Die.
Oh, really? That's so appropriate.
Yeah, it's so incredibly appropriate. So, I mean, it makes sense they were in Wipeout, though. I mean, it's Wipeout XL. Firestarter was the song. It was like them, Orbital, Crystal Method, like all of the huge European electronic bands at the time.
Yeah. Oh, it was great stuff, man. I still remember seeing the video for Firestarter on MTV, and I was like, holy shit, this thing has actual lyrics?
Yeah.
Because I knew it from Wipeout XL with no lyrics.
It's funny. It's funny, like that band. It's like those guys only do like occasional lyrics and mostly dancing on stage. The rest of it's all I forget his name, Liam something. The actual guy that does all the music, just standing up there pushing the space bar on his laptop and pumping it on.
Pushing the air horn button.
Right. So, yeah, good stuff. Hey, so here we are. Back episode. Well, what episode?
It's 8, maybe. Is it 8?
Is it episode 8? This is the horror part 3. This is our third part of our October series, talking about the horror films and games that we love so much. We started things off talking about video stores, and we spent a lot of time talking about the original 1978 Halloween, directed by John Carpenter. And then last episode, obviously going into just a kind of a smattering of various things. Yeah. So this episode, I think we might touch on movies a little bit, but we're going to spend time actually adhering to our namesake a bit and talking about games.
Yeah.
And this is very much going to be a Andrew driven episode. But speaking of which, I didn't actually introduce you. So hi, I'm Tim.
Our cold
the show. I am. And then joined here on the line, as you've been hearing, is Andrew from the West Coast.
Yeah. Yep. Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Thanks for joining us again. And I don't know why you're gluttons for punishment and you keep coming back to us, but we appreciate having you, all three of you.
Yeah. It's You know, a lot of podcasts are focused on, let's talk about the most recent things. Let's talk about things that are happening in the world as it is now.
Yeah.
And I think you and I look at the world as it is now and say, well, that's a bunch of shit. Let's talk about happier times and happier memories and
Yeah.
the things that have gone into making us the people that we are.
Yeah, I love the way you put that just now. Yeah, because that's what it feels like we do here. So,
Yeah. So we're
yeah,
old.
you know,
I think that's the best way to put it.
yeah, definitely.
It's our midlife crisis in audio form.
So yeah, I'll definitely drive the games discussion a little bit later, but we still got some unfinished business in the realm of film. And I think 2 episodes back, you teased that we would maybe talk about The Ring and The Grudge.
Yeah.
You also said VHS, but I feel like we covered that on the last one, so I think we're
good. We touched on that. What do you want to know about the 2 most terrifying fucking movies I saw in the late 90s, early 2000s? What would you like to know?
I just want to talk about our experiences watching those, basically. I remember for me the Grudge stuck with me more than The Ring. I love them both, and I've had my I've talked about my younger sister-in-law who I'm kind of introducing to horror movies. I had her watch The Ring recently, and she thought that was really good. And that movie holds up, man. I know it's not like it's super old. It's not like
so even revolving around the idea that it's all VHS tapes, so you feel it still holds up.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my sister got it,
Sure.
and she was born in the year 2000, like well after VHS had its run, so yeah, it's, I think it just, there's something about it that, I don't know, it like when you were talking 2 episodes back about holding the tape in your hand and stuff, like it's almost like there's a presence like fused into the tape. And I don't mean to sound like too much of a jackass here or something, but
No, it's way too late for that.
Yeah, I know. But like when you hold those horror movies, I don't know, it's a little different from like, I haven't really, maybe it's because I'm older or I got older by the time it happened, but like the only DVD I ever really owned that had horror on it was, that freaked me out having it in the house was The Grudge, because the movie made such an imprint on me.
Yeah.
But there were a ton of VHS movies that felt like that. It's like you said, you kind of had to get up the courage to hold the thing in your hand. And I don't know, there's just like something, there's like a mystique about like the old worn out kind of format. And I think that still managed to communicate to her, as a new viewer in 2017, I think it was 2018 when I made her watch that. Yeah.
There is something to say about that. It's like having so flashback a bit to the early 2000s. I had a house. My then girlfriend. We had a huge DVD collection, and there's something I think physically imposing about having these movies on your shelf.
Yeah,
like The Ring and The Grudge physically existing in your home,
right?
Whereas opposed to now, it's
it's almost like you're inviting the evil into your home, kind of.
Bit, yeah. So I don't know. I mean, so let's talk about The Ring really quick. So obviously, I first watched it when it came to home video. It was on home. I actually watched it on VHS to give you an idea of. Let me just. When did The Ring come out? When did the original Ring release? 2002. Maybe I didn't watch it on VHS. That would have been weird. That would have been. That's on the teetering edge. You know what I mean? Like it's like that perfect time where it's like, wasn't on VHS or DVD.
Right.
Anyway, so watched it and scared the shit out of me. Really did. And I remember like my friend Garrett and I, the same person I went to the Type O Negative show with, weirdly enough. We watched it and we for about a week afterwards, we became incredibly paranoid of all of the VHS tapes we had around because he had an apartment at the time and I was pretty much just living there. I was just crashing on the couch all the time. And this was the era where, like, if you wanted to record a TV show, you had to record on VHS, obviously.
Yeah.
And so we had piles of blank VHS tapes laying around, and we always kind of gave them like a sideways glance.
Sure.
After watching that movie. So If anybody out there is not familiar with The Ring, essentially there's a videotape that trades hands person to person. Excuse me. You watch it. It's a series of weird images. And after you finish watching it, your phone rings. Now, how's that for like a double whammy of old school? Your phone in your house rings. You answer it, and the phone says, "In 7 days you'll die." And then, like 7 days later, you die. And you don't really the whole movie. You're not really sure. Well, how do you die? You know,
right?
And
right.
the only way to lift the curse is to have someone else watch the tape before the 7 days are up to transfer the curse to them.
Yeah, and then the 7 days starts over with the new person. They get the phone call, and then the clock's ticking.
Right.
And the other thing about that too is the movie opens and you see somebody after this happens and after the curse like runs its course, right? Like you don't watch them die. You see their corpse after they've died. And the corpse is terrifying to look at.
It really is. And I really quick want to go back is that The Ring is based on a Japanese movie from the late 90s called well, I think it translated to Ringu is what it's known as over here, but really in Japanese you wouldn't pronounce the U, it'd just be ring.
Right.
And same premise, same basic premise.
Mm-hmm.
They really didn't stray too far from the source material on that. But yeah, so the American remake, Naomi Watts was the star. Yeah, just a real creepy movie. Yeah, and you don't actually see the girl killing anyone. Like what happens after you hit 7 days. You don't actually see that happen until the end of the movie. And it's fucking terrifying.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it is. And they have such a great soundtrack. There's this like kind of weird mix of almost like white noise and then like sort of like, I don't know, string instrument crossed with like metallic, like squeaking sort of.
Yeah.
It's hard to describe. You have to kind of hear it, and maybe we can patch it into the show here after the fact. But it's very effective in just the sound and then like the stillness of the image on the television. Because like regardless of what happened to the tape or where you are, like when the curse is up and it's your time to go, the television nearest you turns on and it's the last frame of the video is there. And it's just still and you hear that music and it's just chilling, you know? And then like things start to happen. I'm guessing most people have watched the movie.
How funny is that? Like when we're talking about it, I turn around and look at the TV that's in my room. To this day.
Yeah. It's a great horror movie, man. It's too bad. Did you ever see The Ring 2 and Rings? Did you see those?
I believe I saw Ring 2. I don't remember, honestly. Maybe I didn't.
I haven't seen them because I had heard that the general consensus was that they were not worth your time. But I did see the Japanese crossover of Ring and Grudge together.
Right, I was just gonna say there was a Japanese Ring versus Grudge movie, which is fucking crazy. But it is. And I think one of the things that this started was both like Japanese horror was experiencing a renaissance in the late 90s.
Yeah,
and both these movies, in my mind, are hopelessly intertwined because of that. Mm-hmm. And going even further is that there was it started the visual aesthetic of having really weird, creaky, body deforming movement.
Yeah,
very creepy. Kind of that aesthetic really set in place with both of these films, The Ring first, and then later The Grudge. Mm-hmm. And I would dare say that's still with us to this day. Any movie you watch that's like a supernatural film generally is going to have that kind of creepy, disjointed body movement of the spooky person that's in the film.
Yeah, like I can immediately recall just a few games to rattle off here. So Killer Instinct on Xbox One.
Yes. Yeah, that character is absolutely based on The Grudge.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Hisako is her name. And she's I love that character. I'm a tiny bit obsessed with her. And I even bought the the ultimate toy figure of her. I don't know why.
Such a nerd.
Yeah, I know. I don't know why I felt like I needed to have that in my house, but I have it. Also, The Evil Within has a great boss character that kind of hounds you for a little while in the game until you ultimately have the showdown. And it is like that kind of body deforming thing, but with like more limbs than you should have, almost like spider-esque. And it just, long fingernails, but like the long dark black hair like over the face, like hanging on the floor, right? Like, and it crawls after you down hallways and stuff at like high speed, and it's just like terrifying.
Yeah, and that's absolutely from. I mean, take your pick. That's either movie.
Oh
That's
yeah,
largely,
yeah. The influence is obvious, so
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, they're just two legendary movies, and definitely icons of horror. I would like to see when people start, like, you always see, like just recently going around because it's Halloween. There's like what is it, the Slash Street Boys, where
Oh god,
and Michael Myers, I think Leatherface, and then the Ghostface guy from Scream. They're supposed
yeah,
to be like the Backstreet Boys, and they're like singing about killing and stuff. Um, I get it because they're all slasher movies, sort of, but like kick Ghostface out of there because he sucks, and put the Ring Girl or the Grudge Girl or both of them in there. You know what I mean? Like they're on that level of like iconic status, in my opinion.
yeah. I never warmed up to the Scream movies. I
I
watched it
enjoyed
when
the
it first
first
came
one.
out. Yeah, I watched it when it came out because everybody was really about it at the time. It was kind of almost unescapable.
Yeah,
But yeah, I never really stuck with it. Never really had that much interest in it.
I saw a couple of the sequels, and they were just kind of bad, and they waded into like Nickelodeon teen drama territory. You know what I mean? With like some obvious blood and guts because it's R rating and all that, and horror movie, but they were just bad. Um, I don't know. I'd get it though. Some people really like them, and I won't. I won't begrudge you that.
Sure,
Go
sure.
for it if
Huh.
that's your thing.
Yeah. Begrudge, no pun intended.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So no, both those movies. And and it's funny with both of those films, they had American remakes, The Grudge and The
Yeah,
Ring.
yeah. The
And
Grudge one 2 years after The Ring.
yep, Sarah Michelle Gellar starred in the remake of the American version.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that creeped me out the most was um the television commercials for the original Grudge were very creepy. Because it had scenes that alluded to the girl. It would cut to the scene of The Ring. It was the one girl that came on the TV after you watched the video, right?
Yeah.
7 days later. But the Grudge was a haunted house movie essentially, and if you were in the house had an evil spirit residing in it, and it was a sister and a brother. And the brother just kind of watched you and was creepy, and the sister was the one that actually did the killing.
Wasn't it? I thought he was the son. He was the brother to the.
I thought he was the brother.
I thought
I
the
don't know.
husband. Sorry, I'm totally busting up your flow, but I thought
No, you're not busting my flow. That's just how I remember it. I could be remembering it completely incorrectly.
I need to watch it again with my sister because I think the way I remember it was the husband went on a rampage after finding out that his wife was maybe interested in another man, and he ends up killing her and their son, and the family cat gets it too.
Yep, that's what it was. It was his wife and her son. You're right. I'm
Okay.
reading the Wikipedia article right now.
Okay, good. I was just thinking, why am I not reading this off Wiki?
Right.
I'm right, but yeah.
Well done, sir. So the in the TV commercials though, it would cut to a scene of the little kid, mouth wide open, like in a screaming face. But it was the sound of a cat meowing.
Yeah.
And it always fucked with me.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the thing is with both of these movies, like they only so the Ring got like a Ring 2 and then a bunch of sequels in America. But The Grudge didn't get sequels right off the bat, but it got a lot of sequels in Japan almost immediately after the first movie came out.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So in Japan, the movie's called Ju-on.
Right.
And it kind of delves more. And so, and like The Ring, so Ringu, as we'll call it, it's the Japanese version's not as scary as the American one.
Right.
I'll say that controversially. The one interesting thing about the Japanese version is that all of the since it was the late '90s, all of the effects are completely practical,
Right.
and very low budget. So when she crawls out of the TV, it's a really kind of clever camera trick of her crawling out of a television set. Whereas in the American version, it's all CG.
Mm-hmm.
And the Grudge was largely the same, where it was like the Japanese version, not as scary as the American. A lot of the action kind of like when the girl appears to kill somebody, a lot of the time it cuts right before the killing. You don't actually, nothing happens, right?
Yeah.
These movies aren't really gory. I should preface with that. It's very much supernatural terror, similar to The Exorcist in that regard. But anyway, sorry, I'm rambling on now.
Okay.
No, the Grudge they're both classics of the genre, and two films that really affected me.
Same here. I saw both of them in the theater with my dad. I think I've touched on that before about how going to movies was something that my dad and I really bonded with when I was growing up, and well into adulthood and stuff continued. And even after I'd met my wife, we continued to go to movies with my dad and stuff. And to this day, I had to go see the new Halloween in the theater. And I talked about that last episode, but the Ring we saw together, and it was definitely scary, and both really liked it. But The Grudge was the one that would continue to haunt me for some time after seeing it. And there's two movies that I've seen in my life that genuinely terrified me in the theater. And I'll talk about the other one next, because I'm curious if you've seen it and what your thoughts are on it. But The Grudge, specifically when Sarah Michelle Gellar is in the house, and the spirit of the dead wife is fully loose and coming after her, right?
Mm-hmm.
She goes from the upstairs to the downstairs entryway area.
Yes, and the creepy bone cracking walk. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. The walk down the stairs accompanied with the terrible moan that comes out of her mouth. But
creep me out just thinking
I
about
know.
it. Jesus.
I know. So that really got to me. But what sealed the deal, what made that movie forever, it left a mark on me. Sarah Michelle Gellar is on the floor, crab style, right? Trying to get away. She had tripped, and she's trying to back up to the door and get the fuck out of the house. And she gets to the point where her back is to the wall right next to the door. And she reaches up behind her, and the spirit is basically at her feet. It is right there. Time is about up, this is your last possible moment to open the door and get the hell out of there. And there's a good chance that you might get your ankles grabbed and you'll just get dragged right back into the house, right?
Yeah.
And as she opens the door while still watching the ghost at her feet, she opens it just wide enough for the head of the ghost to suddenly reappear from outside the house and lower, above her. So it's she looks up at the doorknob kind of, and there is the head coming down on her, and it's still making that moan. And it's just in that moment, I will never forget it. I was paralyzed in my movie theater seat. I was just frozen in just terror, right? Just there's no escape. This is my worst nightmare, right? Ghosts have always been something that kind of wing me out a little bit. And this movie just particularly touched on my exact weakness in the best way, possible for maximum effect.
100%. I'm there with you. It's absolutely two of the most terrifying movies I've ever seen in my life. There's no way around it. I'm sitting here now getting creeped out by you just retelling that scene. So,
you know what it is about that stuff too, is those two villains, right? Those two monsters, spirits, whatever you want to call them. What is so scary about them is that while, ultimately, as if you've watched both movies, there is a way to get around the curse. They're not a gun is not going to help you. A baseball bat's not going to help you, right? There's no, there's no real great way to escape. Whereas if you have Leatherface, banging on your door, well, I know how to handle that guy. He's really scary. And I wouldn't want him at my house. Fuck no. But that's what, weapons are for. Right. And you can deal with that problem and maybe live. But if either of those things from The Ring or The Grudge came after me, I don't know what the fuck I would do. I would piss myself, you know.
That might not help.
Yeah, they're just terrifying, man. Just unstoppable forces, you know. Like I
Yeah.
just oof.
And genuinely creepy. That's the thing that really
Yeah.
gets me. It's just genuinely creepy.
Yeah, totally. Uh, okay, so moving on, I want to talk about another movie really quick here, and I'm hoping you've seen it and maybe have something to say about it. But I mentioned that there were two movies that really made an impact on me. One that I saw in the theater and actually had to walk out of the theater because I couldn't handle it.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was a teenager at the time, so you got to give me a little bit of leeway there.
Oh, sure. No. Yeah, no judgment here. Just surprising to hear that.
Yeah. I was with my dad too. But the movie just got me hard. I guess I was 14 years old because it came out in 1994. But the movie was In the Mouth of Madness.
Hit them out. Really?
Yeah.
Really? I
Yeah.
am surprised.
That movie just got to me. It really did. John Carpenter's In the Mouth of Madness.
Yeah, starring Sam Neill.
Yeah. Who you might remember from Jurassic
hot off. Yeah, I'd say hot off his Jurassic Park tenure back in 1983.
Yeah. There was a scene in the movie that I remember really clearly. First off, it genuinely creepy all around, just like as this guy kind of starts to see crazy stuff all over the place in this town, right? He's I forget what the story is exactly. They're looking for like some kind of horror novelist, I think. I can't remember Sam Neill's character. It's been too long since I watched this. I should revisit it. I can't remember why he goes to this town, but it was the town that the author lived in and disappeared from. And anyway, he starts to see like disturbing things. Like he's just in the lobby of I think it was a hotel, and he sees like a painting. And then every time he looks at the painting on different days and stuff while he's there, like it changes, and he starts to see things like, you know, I think it's like a rotting corpse or a skeleton suddenly appears in it or something like that wasn't there before. And it's just like, it's eerie, right? But what got to me was they were driving in a car at night in the dark, just down like a simple 2-lane road. And on the side of the road is a cyclist that they're coming up on. And I should say, not a cyclist, not a dude in spandex with a helmet, but just like somebody riding a bike, right? And as they get closer and closer to it before they pass it, I forget if they show you the first time who it was, but like they pass that biker, and then like a minute later, here comes another person on, you know, biking on the side of the road, and it's the same person. And then it happens a third time, and when they see it, it's like this creepy, like crypt keeper looking thing that's riding on the bike, right? Like, you know, crazy withered face with like stringy hair, like kind of like a, you know, somebody who had been dead for a little while or something like that. And there was something about the way that played out that really got to me. And I couldn't handle it. We had to like walk out of the theater, and I was telling my dad that I was so embarrassed, and he's like, it's okay. You know? So yeah, luckily he didn't give me too much of a hard time about it, but I was like trying to explain to him at the time. I remember, you know, like what it was about it that got to me. And he was, you know, thankfully he was really cool and he didn't mind.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, I guess I remember watching that movie. I don't remember having that big an impact on me, but I should.
I mean, I was 14, right? And I guess, you know, my birthday's in the middle of the year, so there's a chance I might have still been 13, right? But you know, like when you like, I feel like that's just young enough still. I guess it came out in.
I'm looking at February 1995 is when it was released.
That says South Korea, but IMDb says 1994.
Oh, I'm willing to believe IMDb. I'm on Wikipedia.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. It says February 1995 USA here on IMDb. So apparently I was fully 14. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know what to say other than that one got to me. Another one that I didn't have to leave the theater for, but definitely scared the shit out of me when we saw it was Event Horizon.
Oh God, another Sam Neill film.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that one has, you know, that's one of the, talking about movies that didn't really get the respect when they came out, but over the years have gained a bit of a cult following. Event Horizon is definitely one of them.
Yeah.
Because when it came out, not a lot of people gave the time of day. But now it is often counted on lists of the most terrifying films ever made.
Yeah. Oh yeah, man. I mean, like, who, if you've seen the movie, who can forget when they discovered like the last log entry of the previous crew on that ship?
Yeah. Well, and there are websites dedicated to scene by scene breakdowns of, because you see that in flashes,
Sure.
that log file, and like people actually like pause the scenes, and apparently there's just like wonderfully horrific things happening
Yeah. Oh
in all
yeah,
of
they go
those.
bonkers with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely made a lasting impression with me. I thought that movie was scary as all hell when I saw it, and I've been one of those people who have been on that train since the beginning. So
Yeah. Um Boy, it's crazy. Yeah. That movie, I remember it was being very poorly promoted. Like I'm
sure.
looking, I googled, I'm looking at the movie poster, and it's just a picture of the ship, and it says "Infinite Space, Infinite Terror," and it's like, oh, so
Yeah.
cheesy. Because I mean, this movie is more akin to something like a Hellraiser,
Yeah, yeah, sure.
as far as the subject matter that it's dealing with. It's much more a science fiction movie that has horror overtones
Mhm.
than it is an actual horror film. Um,
The horror is pretty strong in it, though. You know.
it is, but so we should point out for anybody who hasn't seen it, it really comes down to Event Horizon is a ship that they find that was considered lost, and
A
had
spaceship.
a
Yeah.
spaceship. And unbeknownst to them, it had actually wandered into hell as we know it, and came back.
Yeah.
So within the ship is all kinds of just horrible evil. And the fate of the crew was basically that they, went to hell essentially,
Mhm.
and suffered the horrific fate that one can imagine, and is shown to the audience through flashbacks and things like that.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah. And I in the movie, I remember, I don't know, I've not watched this in some time, but in the movie, they had a gravity drive, and the gravity drive that they activated is what eventually triggered their voyage to hell, if I remember correctly.
Mhm. Yeah,
And
they talked in the movie about like basically super fast travel where you're folding space as if it were a sheet of paper and you're
right,
like traveling through two holes in the paper versus like all the way across the surface of the paper.
basically stole that from Dune, but okay.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So, and it's funny because I remember I was just reading an article about this, because it's been, God, has it been 20 years? No, less than 10 years.
97 Event Horizon came out, it said.
No, no, not that. I think it's been 10 years since they switched on the Large Hadron Collider.
Oh, sure.
And there were similar fears before they did that. There were people like saying, hey, if we turn this thing on, we could end the universe as we know it.
Hmm.
We could open a gateway to hell, all kinds of stuff. Because that kind of science had never been put into practice before.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I've definitely remember hearing about that kind of stuff.
yeah. So I was just reading an article about how it's the anniversary of the Large Hadron Collider getting switched on, and all the craziness that was around it. There was a bunch of lawsuits and people trying to get injunctions against them turning it on, under, citing that it was going to, could potentially cause the end of the world. And they're like, hey, it's 50-50, right? It might do it, it might not. And it's like, well, I don't know. I guess we can make the same argument of like when I start my car in the morning, it might end the world, but whatever.
uh, simpler times.
Yeah. Yeah, we were much more innocent. We had George W. Bush as our president. We thought that was as bad as it could get. But
Yeah.
anyway, I wish
Okay.
we could just go back to having an idiot president that wasn't damaging.
Right.
Yeah. Anyway,
I got more movies.
go for it.
I think I had mentioned The Orphanage before.
Which I've not seen, but I've
Okay.
heard from multiple sources, yourself included, that it's absolutely terrifying.
Yeah, it's a good one to check out. I haven't seen it in several years now. It's another really good one that I should revisit. But I haven't seen it on any of like the digital services and stuff that I've been using this year to kind of revisit everything. So yeah, maybe hopefully next year it comes around, or definitely worth a rental. I really liked it. I saw it in the theater, and it is a Spanish film that has English subtitles. And basically, the gist of it is that, as the title suggests, there's an orphanage, and woman goes to visit this place, and I think she's supposed to work there, and there's like maybe it's that she's gonna live there. Shit, I should really open up the wiki page right now. Hold on, because I'm gonna murder this story. But basically, there's I guess the reason that I remember it so much, and the reason that I wanted to talk about it, is because this woman goes on a search for a missing kid, basically, and this kind of journey takes her like through various places on the property that the orphanage is located, and there's all kinds of discoveries that she makes, and like the mystery kind of deepens as she goes, of course, right? And near the climax, there's a scene where she discovers a hidden door that just leads to a staircase down into the darkness. And I will never forget when, like, it's dead quiet in the theater, right? And she just discovered this. You basically just hear her kind of breathing and looking down the stairwell and just peering into the abyss, right? And my dad and I look over at each other, and he just shakes his head no at me, and I'm just like, hell no. And it's just such an effective scene. And I don't want to spoil anything for you because you haven't seen it. But there's just some really great tension at play there, with like the unknown, and like, where could this lead, and what could this be? And not just that particular scene, but just the movie in general has a lot of that kind of thing. I remember anyway, having a lot of like potential for like anything could happen here. Like this could go anywhere, and it's just it's very atmospheric. And I think for that reason, a lot of people will appreciate it. It's supernatural horror, definitely, but effective and very memorable. And it pleases me to know that you've heard from more people than just me about how good that one is.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I guess I'll have to check it out.
Yeah.
I trust your judgment.
Thank you. I'll be really interested to hear what you have to say about it. So yeah, get back at me on that.
Okay. Hopefully it's better than Rob Zombie's Halloween with me.
I'm sorry. I need to redeem myself in your eyes here.
No. It's just Rob Zombie's Halloween has its audience. It has its place. I am just not it.
Sure.
That's it.
Fair point. So yeah, you got another one that you put on the list here. You had Dawn of the Dead, and you have in parentheses original and remake.
Yeah, so the original Dawn of the Dead, 1978, written and directed by George Romero, the father of the modern zombie film. Anybody who's not familiar, the movie takes place. It is contrary to popular belief. Like, is it a sequel to Night of the Living Dead? Not really. It came out afterwards. Takes place in the same. I don't want to say same universe, but certainly along the same lines.
Sure.
The movie actually starts, as all good stories do, after everything has already gone to shit. And there's a TV station with a couple of reporters. You meet a couple of cops in a separate storyline, and they merge together. And they are escaping the zombie apocalypse that we are in the early stages of. Mm-hmm. And they find themselves in a mall. And again, the late 70s, so malls were not nearly as prolific as they would become in the late 80s, early 90s.
Yeah.
And what they decide to do is they decide to like hole up in this mall. They're like, we're going to make our stand here. And they seal the mall up. They kill all the zombies that are inside of it. And then for an undetermined amount of time, it's roughly considered to be about a year, they live in this mall. And it's a brilliant social commentary, as most of George Romero's films are. Mm-hmm. Just about how we as humans deal with things. And in this case, it's like, we humans... the world's falling apart, and what do? We stuff ourselves inside of this building and become zombies ourselves.
Right.
And very, very scathing social commentary for the time. And at the end of the movie, you have one of the cops gets bitten by a zombie, becomes a zombie. People break into the mall. Their happy little life is shattered, and our two of our protagonists get in a helicopter and fly off to the sunset, never to, we don't know what their ultimate fate is.
Mm-hmm.
And it's absolutely one of my favorite movies of all time. I first discovered it back in the 80s when I first watched it. And then back in the mid 90s, company Anchor Bay, who was an independent video distributor at the time, they got the rights to this and many other great horror films, and they were putting out these wonderful clamshell case VHS collector's editions of all of these VHS tapes. And we're providing the absolute best quality anybody has seen for many of these films ever. Putting them out for sale for like 15, $20. And I gobbled them up. And one of the earliest films they did was Dawn of the Dead. And they not only had the original theatrical cut, they had the European cut, they had the longer director's cut. And cool. It was just fantastic. And I chewed them all up. And they were there were VHS bonus features, which basically at the time is you hung around after the film and the tape kept playing and stuff came on.
Sure.
And it just cemented Dawn of the Dead, the original, as one of my absolute favorite movies of all time. No question.
Right on. I've not seen the original, actually. I've seen the remake, but not the original.
Yeah, the original's worth a watch. It's not scary. There are suspenseful moments, but it's certainly not scary by modern standards.
Mm-hmm.
But what it is, however, is an incredibly well-made film. Top to bottom, just immensely watchable, which is probably the highest praise anybody could heap on any film, is that you want to watch the entire thing.
Nice.
So the remake, I was very skeptical. It is a Zack Snyder film, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah. And it's when it came out, I watched it in the theaters, and I was first kind of just like, ugh, fast zombies, great. I hate fast zombies. It's very much it's one of those things. It creates a dichotomy in the fandom. Fast zombies have no place in zombie films. That's just the way I feel about it. You're not going to change my mind. I'm sorry. Sure. This isn't a social issue that someone can reason with me and present their point of view and change my opinion. It's just fast zombies are no good.
Okay.
So that was the kind of the first strike against it. However, I did watch in the theaters. I remember vividly that when the Johnny Cash, when the man comes around, during the intro sequence, I remember that hitting me very well. I was like, wow, what a brilliant artistic choice. This music juxtaposes wonderfully with the images that are happening on the screen. Yeah. And the movie was fine. The movie's fun. The movie is fun. It is largely a retelling of the first film. They don't deviate too terribly far.
What about the zombie baby? Is that still from the original?
No, that is not. Okay. And the little girl at the beginning, not from that.
The little girl was great, by the way.
Absolutely. And a lot of people are quick to point out like stuff like contemporary stuff like The Walking Dead is largely pulled from the George Romero Dawn of the Dead. And to a certain extent they are. Absolutely. The slow moving plotting aspects of it. Yeah. But from the grotesque displays of decay such as they are, I would say much of that can be attributed to the Zack Snyder remake. With the very shocking views of the state of various zombies and how they move and how they kill. Those are largely driven by the remake and inspired by the remake.
I'm curious. I'm looking up something. So the comic, The Walking Dead, started in October 2003. The Zack Snyder remake was 2004. It's possible that maybe they saw promotional material and were influenced by that or something
Oh, I'm not referring to the comic. I'm referring specifically to the TV show.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
The reason I'm mentioning this is because the TV show cribs most of its plot from the comic,
Mm-hmm.
and so I feel like certain parts of the aesthetic, down to the characters' outfits and things like that, are also cribbed from the comic. So I would, I don't know that I'd give too much credit to the 2004 Dawn of the Dead remake for the TV show, but in the same breath, I will say that the first zombie encounter that Rick Grimes has on the show is a freaking little girl zombie, just like and it's very reminiscent of that opening for the remake. So
Yeah. Yeah.
there's that.
And and I it's funny. I was just having this conversation with the one of the guys that works at my local comic shop that I'm friends with.
Mm-hmm.
The original Walking Dead issue 1 sold 4,000 copies. I was one of those 4,000 copies. I was there day one.
Nice.
And I sold it long before the TV show came out. I sold it. We were talking about it. He goes, you had an issue 1. He's like, when did you get rid of it? I'm like, I sold it when it was worth $100 back in 2005. Because I was like, this is never going to be worth more than $100. I'd been through the ringer of the comics boom back in the 90s.
Right.
And had I only known that 4 short years later, there'd be a TV show and the comic would be worth an insane amount of money.
Right.
But
that much more, actually, it looks like.
Oh, it's not worth much more than $100?
Well, yes, 3 times. Well, I'm looking at like eBay right now as we speak, and like there's an auction here where the guy has. Oh, it doesn't include number 1. Sorry, I misunderstood. I'm a fool. He has an auction for like $300, and it has some of the comics, and I thought it said including number 1, but it's missing number 1.
Gotcha. Yeah, I know. I had number 1, and I think it's worth quite a chunk of change. Last I knew. I mean, even as recently as 2 years ago, I was going through my comics and I found issue 22, I think, randomly, and I ended up selling that for $35 on eBay.
Oh, that's not bad.
I had all of the original issues like from day one, and it was literally because I was such a zombie movie fan. And the comic shop I was going to in the town I lived in at the time in New York, I was friends with the owner because I'd worked there for a few years. And he knew I was a huge zombie fan, and he goes, "You're gonna dig this." He's like, "Here's this new thing from Image Comics." More specifically, he was like Robert Kirkman, and I'm like, Robert Kirkman, like Invincible, like Battle Pope, like that Rob Kirkman, and he was like, "Yeah." I'm like, "All right." And it turned out like, yeah, this is right up my alley. This is like literally George Romero in comic form, and the pacing of the comic was wonderful as the way they timed everything out as you actually turn the page is when you revealed next pieces of it. And I think that represents a wonderful time in comics where the turn of the page was actually immensely, not that it's not now. I work in the comic business. I know how it works. But this was a time where we'd all been through the speculator boom, and the high art of the medium of comics was at an all-time high, and you had comics like The Walking Dead and Why the Last Man and things like that.
Oh yeah, it's a great series.
And Why the Last Man also getting a TV series pretty soon, which is crazy.
Yeah.
So anyway, it was just incredibly well done.
Yeah.
So all that being said, the original Dawn of the Dead, one of the absolute classic films of the genre. The remake, your mileage may vary depending on how you feel about it.
I liked it quite a bit. Yeah, I mean, I know I had my gripes with it back in the day. Like I didn't care for the zombie baby. I think that was my main gripe, but for the most part, I really enjoyed that, and I thought it was definitely creepy. The ending is very grim.
Yeah.
I think they had like Disturbed Down with the Sickness play over the credits, which I like because I like Disturbed. Even still today in 2018, they just had a new album come out. I've not picked it up yet, but that's a band that I like, and I know they're like one of those bands that people like to rag on all the time. Be like, oh, new metal.
Well, they're no Creed, but I mean, whatever.
Hey man, they have some pretty great relevant shit, and that's a band with some opinions on things, and they're not afraid to share them, and I like that. No, Disturbed.
I wasn't.
Disturbed did a really honest remake of Land of Confusion,
Yeah,
and
I
they
remember that.
mean every word of that. But anyway, I didn't mean to make this a Disturbed conversation, but it was in the credits of the Dawn of the Dead remake, and I like that film. I liked it a lot. There's a particular scene that always stands out for me. As they're on the roof of the mall, they discover that across the street there's a guy on another rooftop, and they can't hear each other, but they want to start communicating, and so they get these dry erase boards, and they basically write messages to each other and hold them up, right? And that guy is in danger at one point, and they're trying to get over there to help him out and keep him alive. And you're not sure, like, did they make it in time? Did they make it? Oh, good. It looks like he's going to write a message. Okay, he's picking up his whiteboard. He's got something to tell us.
Yeah.
And he turns around, he's holding up the whiteboard, and it's just like blood smear handprints all over it, and he's been turned into a zombie. And it's just like kind of heartbreaking when you see it.
There were, I mean, yeah, I don't mean to bag on the movie. There were certainly moments. I kind of want to rewatch it now because I'd forgotten about that scene.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it had its moments. The fast zombies thing, I just can't get past fast zombies.
So you must not be a fan of the 28 something later series, right? 28 days, weeks, and then did they make a third one?
No, hold the phone. 28 Days Later is not a zombie film. It's an outbreak film.
Okay. All right, no,
they're diseased. They're not zombies.
That's a fair distinction to make. I kind of lump them together, honestly, but like, yeah, sure, I go with that. What do you think about World War Z? Is that a zombie?
Oh
movie?
God! Oh, it's the no. Oh, that movie is a kick in the nuts. Oh, that's a fast zombie movie. You kidding me? They run so fast they form human walls.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, they do. I what is your take? So did you not like that movie? Because you don't like that movie.
But you know what? I loved. So this is the opposite conversation that anybody would have with me regarding the novel to film. So Ready Player One, I hated the fucking book. I thought the book was the most condescending fucking man baby. Look how cool I am with my pop culture knowledge, beating you over the fucking head with nostalgia books I'd ever read in my life.
Okay.
But I loved the movie.
Really?
Because the movie took all of that over fucking explained and hey, let me show you all my Pokemons down talking from the novel and just showed it to you and got on with the fucking story.
Oh, okay. You're winning me over here. I've not seen the movie yet because I had heard so much. So I had heard a lot of people say that the book is great and the movie sucks ass.
Yeah, the opposite for me. The book is insulting. The book is someone trying to prove to you how cool they think they are with their pop culture knowledge, whereas the film is a well-told story by one of the greatest filmmakers of the last 100 years. And more specifically, I hope this resonates with both you and anyone listening. The movie turns into the fucking Goonies halfway through and becomes amazing.
I've not seen the Goonies. It's one of those movies that I hear people like talk about and reference all the goddamn time to the point where it's annoying and you just want them to shut up about it, much like Ghostbusters fans and any other kind of.
Totally understandable.
Yeah. And you know, maybe I'll watch it someday. Maybe I should. Apparently, you seem to like it. So, the thing with Ready Player One, though, the people that I'd heard bagging on the movie, they're not people I know. They're just assholes on the internet. You know what I mean? Like, they might not all be assholes, but you know what I mean? They're just like fucking people that you see on message boards and stuff who hated the movie and all touted the book. So it's refreshing and actually kind of interesting to hear you say that. And now my wife was asking me just a few weeks ago. She's like, you know, you wanted to see that Ready Player One. How come we haven't seen that yet? And I was like, oh, I'd heard it was bad, but now I'm going to tell her.
It's a perfectly fun movie. You'll have a good time. Like and it's so weird to say, but how often can you say that about a film these days? You'll have a good time. Right. You'll get to go into the theater and suspend your disbelief, and for 2 hours, Mr. Spielberg will show you how to make a fucking magical, good feeling fucking time movie, and you will be happy you saw it.
Okay, I'm sold. I'm sold. I'll go check it out.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's how I feel about Ready Player One.
Okay. All right, back to the horror. Back to the horror. Uh, I think that's everything that we had on our list here. Do you have any others that you feel like we've excluded that maybe you thought about and just didn't jot down?
Well, I don't know, man. With this particular genre and the films within it, I could go on for a long time. We
Sure.
could have an entire podcast dedicated to it.
Sure.
So I'd rather just stop now and let you talk about some games.
All right, fair enough. Fair enough. So yeah, I actually prefer video games over movies as a medium for horror because the immersion is what really gets me. There's sometimes there are games that like I just can't play, right? Like I told you there was in the Mouth of Madness when I was a kid that I couldn't hack it. I watched it later and made it through. It must not have been that much longer after that I actually saw it and made it through because I haven't seen it in a really long time now. But games, there's one in particular. I'm going to get this one out of the way because everybody knows about it and talks about it when the horror discussion comes up. But PT, which is the demo for the Silent Hills game that we're never going to get.
Right.
And, the story around that, very weird. Most of our listeners probably know it, but just in case you don't, Hideo Kojima of Metal Gear fame was going to make a Silent Hills game, or a Silent Hill game called Silent Hills, rather. And he was partnering with Guillermo del Toro, who you know from the film industry. And they had gotten Norman Reedus from the Walking Dead TV show that we just talked about earlier to be the star of the game. And they had modeled him and everything. And it's E3 one year. I forget what year. It might have been 2014, 2015. This demo just shows up on the PlayStation Marketplace. It's just called PT. And the thumbnail for it, when you have it on your dashboard, it's just like a shot of the woods with like PT kind of written over the top of it. Just like, what is this thing? Who made it? And like, it's very, very low key. They're trying to kind of hide what it is and everything. It wasn't until somebody actually solved the demo, I think a couple of days later, that it was revealed that it was a demo for a Silent Hills game. And it's this really, it's a really cool little piece of interactive terror, in my opinion, but it's super obtuse. It's very weird. Basically, have you played it, Tim?
I've not, but I've seen many videos of playthroughs.
Okay. So yeah,
I'm well familiar with the history of it.
Okay. So yeah, apologies if this is kind of old hat for all of our listeners out there, but just in case it's not, you're in a house, you wake up in a room, it's first person perspective, and you're walking down the halls of this house. And when you get to the other end and go through the door, you are back where you started. It's just this infinitely looping, hallway basically through this house. And there's a bathroom that you can go in along the way at one point. It's locked at first, but every time you go through the house, it changes a little bit. And ultimately, it's kind of revealed, some terrible things went down in that house, and it's, very haunted. And you don't know if it's like, if the main character that you're playing as is one of the people that, was involved in it, or if there's somebody visiting the house after the fact. But when this female streamer, I don't know why I said female. I want to point out that it's a lady, because I've seen other people trying to steal the credit from her. Can't remember her name. I should look it up really quick. But it was a big deal when this girl finally solved the riddle of the demo, which is really weird because it involved all of this super obtuse shit that you had to do. Like I said, like staring at a thing for a set amount of seconds and like going through things in a real specific order. I think at one point you're supposed to say something into the microphone. And then you finally get to the last time through the final doorway, and instead of looping, you get a little movie that plays, and you see Norman Reedus kind of in an abandoned town, and then the Silent Hills logo comes up. But I'm trying to desperately see if I can find the gal's name so I can credit her. I'll have to do it some other time, I guess. I don't know. I'm not coming up. I just tried to Google it. Let's see. Who beat PT first?
Dead silence.
I don't know. I got nothing.
Great podcast.
I got nothing. Yeah.
Now this is podcasting.
I know. I apologize. I feel bad. I was trying to do the right thing and credit her because I actually I was one of the few people that watched it and I didn't understand what I was watching at the time. Right. I was just interested in this thing and I think I was unable to play it myself at the moment, but I could stream. So it was like the next best thing. I was not at home at the time. Right. And hers was one that I'd stumbled upon. And when she figured it out, it was like, oh, this is so cool. But like, she didn't know she was the first person to do it. And I didn't even know watching. I was just like, oh, I'm so glad that this person beat it while I was watching it. Right. But anyway, yeah, it was just cool. And that demo, to finally get around to my personal interaction with it, when I tried to play it, even having seen it already, the audio was really effective. The visuals are very convincing. It feels like a real place. It feels just like anybody's house. And like I said earlier, you know, spirits and supernatural stuff like that is a weak point for me because it's terrifying. You don't know how to fight that, right? Like there seems to be no defense other than like potentially running, and that doesn't always work. So this touched on that perfectly for me. And I still, to this day, I've not made it all the way through that damn demo. I've seen it enough times, like and YouTube walkthroughs and stuff like that from various people. But for some reason, when I'm in that space, I just can't get out of my own head and convince myself that I'm not really there. It just creeps me out too much, man.
Yeah. I haven't played it, so yeah.
Yeah, I know. It's probably hard to speak to having not played it. But it's a different thing. You know, it's like most games, right? Like if you and I sit here and we talk about some old retro game or whatever, like if we just talk about the original Time Crisis and how much we love that, it's one thing to go watch somebody play Time Crisis on YouTube, of course. It's another to have been at a machine and play it yourself, right? So,
right.
Yeah. So anyway.
You know, speaking of which, and you're probably going to want to touch on this, I think this is what you said you got an email about earlier. Night Trap's coming to the Vita.
Oh, it's coming to the Vita?
They just announced that, yeah.
Oh my gosh. I have to buy another Vita game. That's going to be, I have it on the PS4. I have it on the Switch. I have to have that fucking Vita version. God help me. I have to have that
You're
Vita version.
Such a nerd. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, no, I forgot to talk about that. We'll save that for the next episode. Limited Run Games made some announcements that are interesting, but we're neck deep in horror stuff. So
right, neck deep, balls deep.
Yeah. So moving on from PT, there's a bunch of great horror stuff out there, and some of my other favorites. I'll just kind of walk backward a little bit. We'll start modern and we'll go backward from there. The Friday the 13th game that came out last year is
and
fantastic.
you're super into this. Like I've not played it at all.
It's great. It's really great. And I think even you who doesn't play games online might want to check it out and pick up a copy sometime, because you can get it physical at retail now, which wasn't always the case. And no doubt you're going to have some updates to download, I'm sure. But the thing that I think you'll appreciate, even if you never take the game online, it has a thing in it called the virtual cabin. And the virtual cabin is like part escape room, but part like museum to the history of Friday the 13th movies. And it's cool. You're in the first person perspective and you're sort of like, it's just what it sounds like. You're in a cabin and it's like a virtual reality sort of program that's running, and you can access a terminal and you can literally activate like different versions of the cabin, right? So like version 1.0, version 1.1, version 1.2. And as you're looking at these different versions of the cabin, there are different, like things change, like a locked door might open up, right? Or like this Jason mask that was hanging on the wall is, that it's missing now, or that kind of thing, right? And the other fun part about it too is that in different versions of the cabin, like Jason's there. And you kind of want to look at things and like, this character, this counselor member, they were modeled after this character from the this installment in the series, and there's that kind of stuff that's fun to look at and it's interesting, but like also there's a game there because you want to like keep advancing the version of the cabin that you're in until you get to the latest version, and then ultimately you want to have tried to discover all of the different places where Jason can appear there. And it's cool, it's got some good jump scare stuff to it. But of course, that's kind of like the bonus treat mode of the game. The real meat and potatoes is the online multiplayer, which is just wonderful. I really love it. There's something about it. It captures the feeling of a fun 80s slasher, but is also like at the same time, it can be really scary. You basically have 7 people who play as counselors, and then one more person who plays as Jason every game. And you all spawn in different places on a map that's like there are different locations from the various movies over the years, right? So there's like Camp Higgins, there's like Packanack is another one. There's what is it? I think is Crystal Lake its own map, or is that, I think, well, anyway, they're all just different locations from the various movies and stuff, and they're like very faithful to the sets in the movies, like right down to like table placement inside the houses being in the same spot, right? Like all this kind of stuff, like the telephone is in the same spot or whatever, right? Like all of that kind of shit. Like Tommy Jarvis's house looks just like it does in the movies. There's the room with like the monster masks and shit up there on the second floor and stuff. And that part of it is really cool because again, if you're somebody who's seen all those movies over the year, you'll appreciate all that stuff while you're running for your life. But yeah, it's fun. You basically have 20 minutes, and Jason, obviously his only goal is to kill everybody. And he can teleport around the map, which it has a cooldown. He can't just like immediately keep doing it over and over, right? Because you want the counselors to stand a chance. So you've got to weaken him somehow. And so the answer to that is having all of his moves on a cooldown after they're performed. But yeah, the counselors need to either survive 20 minutes or call the police, at which point it's like a certain amount of time until the police arrive at one of the 2 areas on the map where like the road leads out of the campground, and the cop cars will be there waiting with the lights flashing and the sirens and stuff. You'll hear it. You just got to run toward it, and then your character will kind of like run off screen, and Jason can only go so far before the cops will just unload all their guns onto him.
Right.
And then he of course sits back up again, and then the player can continue to get shot if they want, or they can go try to kill the other counselors. But anyone who makes it out is gone. And then the other way to get out is you can put a battery and gas into a car and drive that out. You got to find the keys also. And there's a 2-seater and a 4-seater. So sometimes you get in these situations where like there's 3 of us here and Jason's hot on our ass and there's only 2 seats in the goddamn car. Who's going to be the one left holding the bag, right? Who's getting sacrificed? And then there's a boat also that seats 2 people. You just have to gas that up, and you have to attach the propeller that you find laying around somewhere in camp. So like, everybody has a mission that they're on basically when they spawn into the game and it starts. It's like, hey, go find the CB radio and call Tommy Jarvis in. And that way, so the first person who dies will respawn as Tommy Jarvis, and they're kind of like a super powered counselor. They can run faster and longer than everybody else, and they have a shotgun on their back that has just 1 shot in it, but it's a powerful weapon for stunning Jason for quite some time while everybody else scatters. And it's that cat and mouse, like dive in through the window of a cabin, get to the door as quickly as you can, barricade it with like a wooden bar so that it takes Jason longer to hack through the door and get in there and get to you, and hopefully you can jump out a window on the other side of the building before he gets to you. You can set bear traps for him. He can set those for you and cover them up with leaves so you don't see them. A lot of great mechanics at play, and it's a very buggy game in a lot of ways. Like there's just odd shit that happens, like Jason picks up a counselor to choke them to death, and for whatever reason, when the kill animation finishes playing, they're like stuck hanging there in the air, right? Or like they might fall through the floor of the map or something like that, right? Like definitely room for some hilarious and at times frustrating bugs. But really, it's one of those games that's more than the sum of its parts. It's fantastic in my opinion, and I was really happy to see that PlayStation Plus members got the game for free this month in October. So if you have Plus and you haven't downloaded it yet, please do give it a shot. It's great. The atmosphere is wonderful, but it's also still fun. And if you've got a group of friends, like that's really the best way to approach it. I play with randos all the time because while my online friends do enjoy it, they play a lot of games and bounce around and stuff. So not always in the mood for Friday the 13th, especially over a year out. And the rando experience, like any other game, is hit and miss, but it is what it is.
Wonder if we could play together, couldn't we? We could just do a little private game kind of thing.
Yeah, I think you can, but it would be really, really handicapped. The person who's the single counselor, you have got your work cut out for you. You really need as many counselors as you can to stand the best chance at surviving.
All right. And there's no single player game whatsoever in this, you're saying?
Not in that mode. The virtual cabin is single player, right? You don't play that online at all. You don't even need an internet connection to play that. And they also do have an offline mode where you can play the main game, but you're always playing Jason and you're hunting the counselors. And of course, the AI just isn't quite there, so the counselors are easy pickings for the most part. But really, I prefer to play as the counselors because the tension is just through the roof, man. Like it gets my heart pounding sometimes when you're playing that game, and the music is all ripped from the movies and stuff too.
Oh, no, not ripped. I was just reading the article. They actually got Henry Mancini to come back and do an original soundtrack for it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I thought that those songs were from the movies. My bad.
Well, I mean, they might be, but they did get him to come back and re-record stuff and musical cues and those kinds of things.
Oh, okay. Awesome. Yeah, if it's not from the movies and it is all original, I mean, it is like dead on because like
the classic thing of like is it what is it? Was it
the Kiki Mama thing?
Yeah.
It's so like slavishly faithful to the source material.
So you got me wanting to play it. You're hyping it up and you got me wanting to play it, but at the same time I don't play online multiplayer games. I just don't.
Play it with me, man. I will show you the ropes. I will make you a believer.
All right. Yeah. What do you got it on?
I have it on PS4, and if you have PS Plus,
I knew you were going to say that.
Okay. I will seriously get it on Xbox. I've dabbled with that idea.
My PlayStation is lost to me because of the new Dragon Quest game. Okay. I don't have access to it.
I'll tell you what. I love it so much. I will pick it up on Xbox, and then you and I can play it together.
Yay!
Because I really do think you'll dig it. Being a horror fan, being somebody who's been watching these things as long as you have, and remembers the day when Jason was, a household name. Yeah, man, I think you'll like it.
I don't know, man. I got to choose between that and Grand Theft Horse.
Did you pick that up?
Fuck no. I've never played a Rockstar game in my life. I don't know. I was tempted, but no.
So I came really close, but I'm not there yet. Since we're talking about Friday the 13th, I also want to talk real quick about the NES game. Did you play that back in the day?
Oh God, yeah. Do. Yeah, that's the song in the game. Yeah.
That's the music, yeah. Yeah, I remember that game coming out and being like panned all around. Like my friends didn't like it, I didn't like it. I mean, it's an LGN game. First off, LJN gets a really bad rap that they don't deserve. I just want to say that.
Listen, Jaws is one of my favorite games of all time, not even ironically, and long before anybody decided that LJN was cool.
Sure.
But the LGN had a reputation for making games that were very dense and not really the best gameplay, and I feel like Friday the 13th was one of those titles.
Okay, so here's the deal with Friday the 13th. If you go look on YouTube, there are a ton of people panning that game, the NES game, saying that it's just garbage. It's the worst game. It like makes no sense.
Oh, there's way worse games than that. I would never.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, totally. In recent years, I've really come around on that game. Really, it was as before the NES Classic came out. I just stumbled on some dude's video where he was like, "Hey man, this game, here's how to beat it." And I don't know what possessed me to watch it, but I was just like, okay, I'll watch this video because I'm kind of curious. I remember this game, right? And he goes through it, and it like makes a lot of sense. And I'm like, yeah, we just couldn't figure this out as kids because like there's nothing in the instruction book about it. I don't think like we had like a Nintendo Power strategy guide or anything like that at the time for that game. So figuring this stuff out was really, it was beyond us. We were young when that game came out. It was an NES game. We couldn't have been more than like 10, maybe 11.
And isn't that what's so funny about that is a Friday the 13th game for the NES.
Yeah.
Before rating systems explicitly marketed to children.
Yeah.
It's so funny. All of these films are R-rated. So.
Yeah. Yeah. And he's, it's a game about protecting children before they're murdered. But I've come around on the game since the NES Classic came out because I put it on my NES Classic and I played it. And after watching that guy talk about, here's how to play this game, here's the steps you need to do, and here's why this happens this way, and so on. Even explaining the way that the map works. This might have been a different video. A guy was talking about the map works clockwise and counterclockwise. And that was such a revelation for me because I was like, that's how you navigate that goddamn thing. It didn't make any sense to me until he put it in that perspective. And now it makes sense. And it's a very playable, beatable old retro game. And now I am a firm believer that it was, it was actually good and just nobody understood it at the time. And that's also
want to watch that video.
Yeah, I'll see if I can go find him. There's also another LJN game, Nightmare on Elm Street, which I rented back in the day.
That was not a good game. Don't tell me that you think that's a good game now.
I liked it back then. I finished it. I played it while I was going through this sort of discovery of the Nightmare on Elm Street series, because a lot of those had come out and I didn't see them, being a little kid or whatever. And then there was just a thing. I think it was maybe the 3D movie was coming to theaters, or had come to theaters, and my dad took me to it. And then from there, I needed to go watch all the old movies. I think that might have been what happened. I don't know if that timeline jives with the Nintendo game, but
no, it would have, because the Dream Warriors, I believe, was the 3D one, right?
Shit, I don't remember, honestly. I just remember like Freddy exploding and the stuff comes flying.
Yeah. Okay. Oh no, I'm sorry. Final Nightmare. That's the one. 1991. So yeah, that
sounds right. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I'd been watching all the movies that came before that we could get at the rental store, and I'd rented the video game, and I liked the game, and it might have had something to do with just like my momentary fascination with Freddy. But I thought the boss fights were kind of interesting and fun, like the nightmare world that it would transfer over to, and like, picking up the boombox power up to try and keep yourself awake a little bit longer and stuff like that, right? Like those were all like things that really resonated with me from having been a fan of those movies at the time. So yeah, I had an appreciation for that game, definitely. Right on. I didn't think it was that all that scary of a game, really, but I liked it, and the movies worked for me. And being
by that time, Freddy was a stand-up comedian.
Totally, yeah.
It was less about like, hey, he's a child molester and he kills kids, and it was more like, you're gonna die, bitch.
Yeah, totally. But I like those. They were creepy but watchable for me. So, and that wraps our LJN discussion. I want to move on to other games.
We could talk about Jaws, but we won't.
So yeah, let's talk about The Evil Within, because that was another modern one that I wanted to visit here before we're through. I'd mentioned it earlier with that boss that kind of harkens back to the Grudge and the Ring, but there's a lot of great bosses in The Evil Within. I love some of the designs. They're very creepy. They're very like Silent Hill-esque, but also like kind of Resident Evil, like best of both worlds.
Who knew? What with it being the creator of the series and all.
Right, right. But there's a particular character, um, the Keeper, I think is his name. It is a dude walking around with like a butcher's smock, a meat tenderizing hammer, and on his head is like a safe wrapped in barbed wire. So there's no like human head there. It's not like a hat or anything. It's just where his head should be. There's that safe. And he is just this menace that you see from time to time. He's very creepy, follows you around. And when you kill him, the body kind of disappears and the safe drops to the ground. And then not too long after, like a new body kind of violently forms underneath the safe again until he's like standing there. And it's just that kind of like unstoppable force, like sort of eternal supernatural enemy type that does so well with me. And yeah, he's very memorable, along with the other one that I mentioned earlier. And that game is another one that I think, I know that your taste in gaming can sometimes be unpredictable to me. Like things that you like and don't like can sometimes surprise me, right?
Okay, okay. Well, I appreciate that.
But as somebody who's a horror fan, I feel like The Evil Within, especially because it's dirt cheap now. You can probably go find a copy for $10. The way that game starts is very effective, and I feel like the intro is something that like anybody who's a horror fan should experience.
The trick
And
is though
it's
is that it's the amount of time required to get through a game like that.
sure,
I
I
just
get
don't
that.
do it. I just don't do it these days.
I think it's about like maybe a 10 to 12 hour game for me if memory serves.
No, that's not
Um,
too bad.
yeah, I love it though because the whole thing is like a haunted house come to life, and I love that about it. Like
I'm
there's
sorry,
different.
just laughing because I'm in the same breath as I'm like, well, I don't really play games that long, you know. Meanwhile, I'm looking at the like 167 hours I have into Borderlands 2, you know.
Sure, sure. Yeah, I mean, if you can sit down and even just play The Evil Within for like half hour, 45 minutes at a time, I think you'll definitely make your way through it.
That's fair.
Um, it's just interesting in that like the set pieces change, and like all of them just remind me so much of like various sections inside haunted houses that I've been to. There's everything from like the industrial meat packing kind of thing with like loud sirens going off and red lights flashing on the wall, and then like blades coming out of the wall and spinning and stuff, and they're going to grind you up unless you find the exit, right? um, Other sections that are the cobweb uh dust covered mansion that's not had anybody set foot in it for some time, and there's traps in there and things like that you can activate on accident. And yeah, it just it varies a lot. But it starts with you kind of like you've got these three police officers who are arriving at this mental hospital that has had an incident there. And I don't think anybody knows how bad the situation is as they're driving to the scene. You kind of join them as they're on the road on their way to it. And when they get there, everybody gets out and you walk in, and it's just a mess in that place, right? Like there's bodies everywhere. It's a complete horror show. And the person who did it makes a very brief appearance, and it seems like they may have killed the lead character, but you don't know. Like, did they knock them out? Did they kill them? Because the main character comes to hanging upside down from his feet in a sort of slaughterhouse area where there are other bodies around, and there's this very creepy Leatherface-esque guy walking around, and you see him kill the other person next to you that's hanging there, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
it's very apparent, like, I'm about to get butchered unless I find my way out of here. And once you figure out how to get loose, the next 20 minutes is a cat and mouse game of you being unarmed, trying to find your way out of this place while he is always just around the corner, trying to find you, trying to sniff you out. And you're like hiding in lockers, you're hiding under beds. And normally I don't care for that kind of horror experience where you're defenseless and all you can do is run, because I wouldn't want the whole game to be that way. It's why I never finished Outlast. I prefer being able to like kind of arm up and fight. But for this section, you're kind of without weapons, and it just gets really climactic, especially at the end of the area. It just seems so so intense, and it's so like disturbing that it just resonated with me. And I don't want to talk about it in too much more detail for fear of spoiling it for you, because like I said, you can find it for pretty cheap these days, I bet. And I'd be really curious to hear your thoughts on it. So
maybe I'll say maybe.
Yeah, maybe in time for next year's Halloween show. How about that?
All right, I'll feel comfortable with that. Yeah.
Okay, great. So everybody talks about Resident Evil 4 all the time. I love that game. I don't want
just got announced for the Switch today.
Yeah, it did, and it's going to be really hard for me to not get it.
What? Come on, man! Jesus, this is ridiculous.
It's because I love playing stuff in portable form. That's
dude. That game has been on every platform since its debut on the GameCube in 2001.
I know. I have it on PS3. I have it on PS4.
It was on the PS2.
Yeah, I don't have the PS2 version anymore.
Yeah, well, I can see why not. What with you owning 4 other versions.
Yeah. But there's something about buying stuff for the Switch because you would like to have it in handheld form. Like, there's no excuse for me to buy Night Trap on Vita other than just liking Vita stuff.
Well, you're one of the few people I know whose Vita is not covered with dust.
Right. Yeah.
Now that Tempest 4000's on the Xbox One, I have zero reason to touch my Vita for TX3.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure, that's fair. But I love mine. And the Switch is very much the same way in that I like having the portable experience. Because I often find myself where my wife has TV shows that she likes, and I like to be in the room with her, but not necessarily tuned into that show. And so that's when I get to play Switch. And
see, it's funny.
It's great.
We have the opposite in our relationships, whereas my wife is the hardcore gamer. Like, she literally, like, that's the reason we have 2 living rooms, essentially.
Sure.
She plays games like it's her job. It's her hobby. It's her hobby. That's what her relaxation is.
Yeah. Yeah.
I get it. I get it. I do. I'm just saying I'm on the opposite end of that.
Sure. But yeah, I like the Switch for that reason. So yeah, honestly, I've been wanting to replay Resident Evil 4 this year, kind of to get into the spirit of Halloween. But there's been enough other games doing that for me where I've just kind of said, maybe I'll do it another time. And I bet you by this time next year, I have that Switch version, and that'll be how I revisit
no doubt. By this time next year, you'll be reviewing Resident Evil 4 on the Switch. You'll be reviewing Night Trap on the Vita.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, and honestly, no shame in buying a great game as many times as you want to if you love it. And
I know.
like
I'm just ripping on you.
I know. But like, it would be different. I don't know. Maybe it wouldn't. I guess to each their own. Whatever game you want to buy multiple times, more power to you, I suppose. I was going to try and make some argument for not buying some shitty game again, but whatever. If that shitty game is something you love, do your thing.
Yeah. Hey, let's talk about the Fear series really quick. So you have Fear 2 on the list.
Yes.
And it's important to mention because you want to talk about games. You want to talk about movies like The Grudge or The Ring. The Fear series directly, heavily influenced by both of those films.
Oh yeah, Alma is completely, a nod rather to the design of the creatures from The Ring and The Grudge. And I can't think of either of their actual names right now.
Is it Sadaka or something like that? Is the Ring girl? Maybe not. Those are the Japanese versions. I don't remember.
Yeah, no, Fear 2. I list Fear 2 specifically because while I've played all 3 Fear games, Fear 2 was the first one that I played, and I went back to Fear 1 because you have to keep in mind I'm not a big PC gamer. And so Fear 1 was a big hit on PC, but I think we got Fear 2 before we got Fear 1 to come out in some form or whatever. But what got it for me was...
Wait, is Fear 1 on the consoles?
It is, yeah. You can get it on 360, I believe. It might be on PlayStation 3 also.
Oh, I had no idea. I thought that was one of those, much like No One Lives Forever. Another, weirdly enough, another Monolith Tech game, which was also, who did Fear, the Fear series.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was just locked to the PC and never to be seen by anyone else.
Yeah, no, I've definitely played the original on console. So, yeah,
I'd be curious to know what console. I'm going to look really quick. You continue talking. Sorry.
Yeah, I think I want to say PS3 because that's how I own. That's where I own Fear 2 and Fear 3. I can't see my shelf from here. I don't know. Yeah, I might have played it on 360 though. I can't remember.
Oh no, it did come out on PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360.
It's probably, for some reason I felt like it might have been 360 only, but if it's on PS3, that's where I have it since I've got the other two there. So, but yeah, Fear 2 had a demo that came out, and I tried that demo and I thought it was really, really great, and that's what made me go pick up the full version when it came out. I remember because it came out on Valentine's Day, and I still have the card. It's like a little postcard looking thing that has Alma on it, and it says Happy Valentine's Day. like she's your, terrible unwanted Valentine. I think I've got that tucked into the game case still. But yeah, it's a really great ride of a game. There's a lot of cool stuff, and like it's all psychic power based supposedly, but it feels like supernatural ghastly shit to me, right? It just feels totally indistinguishable from that. They can call it psychic powers all they want, but that's just ghost shit to me in those games.
Yeah. What's interesting about that game is, so at the time that game came out, it was 2000. I'm reading the Wikipedia. So it came out in PC in 2005, October 18th, 2005. And the reason I remember that it came out, so my birthday is October 17th. So I actually, it was like I got it for myself for my birthday kind of thing.
Oh, sure.
And at the time it was an absolute showpiece, benchmark technical achievement for the PC.
Yeah, it was.
Between the AI and the physics and just the graphics, everything about it. So I'm curious to see that it came to the consoles a year later. I'd be curious to see how it holds up to the PC version. So,
oh, that's interesting. I didn't know it was so closely behind the PC version. I thought it. See, because I played it after Fear 2, right? So my timeline's all jumbled.
Yeah, I don't know, but yeah, no. At the time, it was just an absolute showcase.
It's renowned for its AI too.
Mm-hmm.
I still to this day see people make the argument that the AI in Fear 1 is, to be emulated by other games still coming out, or like to be matched even by other games still coming out.
Yeah, I have them all on Steam. I bought them forever ago.
Sure. Yeah, they're a great series. Fear 3 less so in terms of like I didn't like the action as much, or the story is the main problem I have with Fear 3. But I love that series. I think we're very due for a revival of the Fear series. Like, it's been enough years now, like bring it back. Go ahead and reboot it for all I care. It doesn't have to be a sequel.
I'll say Fear 3 looks like that was 2011. So wow, yeah, it's been a while.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Fear 3, little fun fact for you, over the credits, the song Mother by Danzig plays. So there's
really?
Yeah. Huh. There is your metal fun fact for this episode. The two things that stand out to me for the Fear games, I think they're both from Fear 2. There is, actually, the first one's from Fear 1. There's a scene, everybody talks about this one all the time, so apologies if it's no surprise, but there's a scene where you're in some industrial-looking place, and you're about to go down a ladder. And when you do start going down the ladder, you kind of like, the camera does a 180 as you start descending.
Yeah.
And just for a second, there's little girl Alma appearing at the top of the ladder where you.
Yep. I remember that vividly.
Yeah. There's also a great scene in that first game that I just thought of too, where you're in like a hallway that begins to fill with blood.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember that, the tidal wave of blood that comes rushing at you down the hallway?
Vaguely. Yeah,
okay.
I think I do.
Yeah, that's another
I remember
mem-
the latter one. The latter one really creeped me the fuck out. Because remember when I'm playing it in the PC when it came out. I'm 3 inches from the screen on a
Yeah,
CRT. You know,
yeah. In Fear 2, there is the music box. Was that a thing in Fear 1? I can't remember.
I couldn't, dude. It's 2018. I played it
Okay.
last in 2005. I couldn't tell you.
Okay, okay.
I could tell you every damn second of Half-Life 2, but yet
Sure,
I got nothing for
sure.
fear.
Okay, well that's fair enough. But there's a music box that plays in Fear 2, and I to this day remember the little jingle and how it goes and everything, and it still kind of creeps me out a little bit. It's like one of Alma's few possessions that she has. And then there's a scene where you're in like an abandoned school in Fear 2, and as you're going down the hallway, the first time you see this enemy type, there's this type that does that kind of like, you know, body, like broken body shifting, kind of like also phasing and like at times visible, at times not visible.
Mm-hmm.
They do that thing as they approach you from down the hall, and you just kind of like aim your shotgun at the last known location of it, and you pull the trigger and hope for the best, right? And I love that kind of thing. I love it. Little things too, like there's another enemy that will animate corpses on the ground nearby as if they are marionettes. So you need to like kind of trace the strings from the corpses back to the person who is controlling them. And it's also very creepy. It's very effective. I love that. So yeah, gosh, I'm getting all excited. I need to go play Fear 2 again after this.
You should.
Okay, yeah. So a few more to knock out here. I'm going to talk real quickly about my personal PlayStation 2 Holy Trinity. A lot of people will refer to Silent Hill 2 as one of the greatest, if not the greatest, horror games of all time. Are you familiar with that one?
I have not played any Silent Hill games.
Oh, wow. Okay. So,
I've not played any of the games on this list. I've not even heard
really?
of two.
Okay.
I've not even heard of two of them.
Okay. That's fine. You'll have heard of two of them just from a collector's standpoint, I bet, when we talk about that. But and you just forgot. But so Silent Hill 2, yeah, I love that game. I have it on PlayStation 2. Um, I think Digital Foundry did a great video on that on the Silent Hill 2 game in particular, not that long ago, maybe like in the last year. And they talk about the HD collection that got put out, and they talk about the PC releases and stuff like that. And I think at the end of the day, their verdict is still like, hey, go play it on PS2 if you're going to play this. And there's not much that I can really say about Silent Hill 2 that hasn't already been said. I was, a fan of it when it came out. I played the first Silent Hill game and really liked it. But oddly enough, my favorite Silent Hill game is not Silent Hill 2. It's actually Silent Hill Shattered Memories, which came out on the Wii as well as the PSP and the PS2. And the PS2 is the version that I own. That's where I first played it. And I really like that game because it does something kind of different and unexpected. There's no combat in it. And it's basically like kind of a retelling of the first game, right? So there's some familiar locations and things like that going on, but from a new perspective. And they turn things on its ear a little bit. There's definitely characters that aren't in the first game. There's whole scenarios and kind of like a new overarching story wrapping the whole thing up that wasn't a part of the first game. And I don't know if you're ever going to play it. I kind of want to just go full spoilers here, if you don't mind.
Oh, I'm not going to play it.
Okay.
I've had my chance.
Okay. So the first game, right, is the main character, Harry Mason, is driving to vacation, I think, with his daughter, Cheryl. And they get into a car accident on some remote road, and when he comes to, his daughter's missing, and so he kind of ventures into the nearby town of Silent Hill to try and find his daughter. So Shattered Memories runs with this, but it's kind of got like sprinkled in are these various sessions where you're outside of that story and you're in the first person perspective and you're talking to a psychiatrist and you're kind of retelling this story to the psychiatrist, and at the same time he's asking you questions, and it's your job as the player to select from like multiple different answers, right, so that the game can kind of shape certain experiences around the answers that you give. And so it kind of feels like the game is evaluating you, right? It's almost like you're taking, like you're being psychologically evaluated. And I like that it tailors the experience a bit to those answers. And as you're going through the game, like I said before, there's no combat. There's a ton of exploring the environment, but then you get into these sort of, I guess, experiences where you've been discovered by these otherworldly creatures who are going to chase you. And so a chase sequence begins, and you need to like run down a hall basically and like knock shit over to kind of slow them down and like avoid other things. Almost like almost like a runner type game, right? And they're just right behind you on your heels the whole time, and that's really effective. If like you enjoy those kinds of horror experience where you're being chased, this is for you. So you don't have to worry about your ammo management or any of that stuff. And I like that stuff in other games. Definitely, I like it in other Silent Hill games, but in this one, it's just kind of refreshing to have a different experience, but still be in the Silent Hill universe. So I appreciate it for that. And the ending is what particularly cemented that game as one of my favorites, because while there's multiple endings in it, like there are in just about every Silent Hill game, the one that I got was just kind of particularly heartbreaking. I'd mentioned earlier about the psychiatrist visits, like the office visits and stuff, right? So
Yeah.
Okay, so
I remember. I've seen those before. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So you think that you're talking from the perspective of Harry talking about how he lost his daughter, right? But it's revealed after the fact, like, one of the last things that happened in my game, the ending that I got, and I never got any other ending, and I never looked into it because it was perfect for me and I didn't want it ruined. It's actually the daughter talking to the psychiatrist, and all of these experiences that you're playing through as her dad are like the experiences that she kind of imagines him going through as he's looking for her. But in reality, it's that he disappeared and she made up these stories, right, about like how hard he must have looked for her and stuff, when she really doesn't know. But she just, in this like tragic story of this girl who just wanted to feel, loved and misses her dad. That was all the stuff that she conjured up in her mind, so it was just kind of like definitely wrenching on your heart there, and just such a cool memory. I really liked that ending.
Yeah, that's pretty dope.
Sorry. I guess you had to be there.
I guess, I don't know. No, it's cool. It's cool. It's like, I'm lacking on the narrative of it.
Sure.
This is where I do so well with movies, because it's like I put it on and I know for 90 minutes the movie's this long and a story will unfold.
Right.
With games,
sure.
I'm not so good with that.
It can be hard. I mean, sometimes you get those video games that are over in 6 hours, and sometimes you get a game that you have no idea how it's going to go, and like 20 hours in, you still haven't finished it, and you're like,
God, I wish games had a runtime. That'd be so good.
It would be great. That's why I think howlongtobeat.com is a good resource in some cases.
But I see the games that are like, yeah, you're gonna get 60 hours, and I'm like, no, that's not for me. I'm more of a Neo Geo kind of guy, where it's like, I'm gonna play Samurai Showdown for 10 minutes.
Right.
Oh, I made it through the game. Guess it's time to turn it off.
Yeah, man. I love the Persona games. But I played Persona 5 last year, and I finished all the way through it. It took me 110 hours. And like, dude, If they could have cut the fat and made that thing 40 hours, I would have loved it so much more. Like I do love it. It's great. You know, it's one of those games someday when I feel like I'm ready for punishment, I'll replay it again. But
Mm-hmm.
110 hours, like, come on, man. It don't have to be that long, you know? Hello?
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah, I I didn't know you were done.
No, yeah, yeah. I was like, uh,
You know?
yeah, man. I don't know. I'm with you there. I hear about games being 8 hours long, and some people are like, that's really short. Or like the Call of Duty games, I think come out, except for the one this year, which has no single player mode. But those come out, and people are like, you can beat that in 4 hours. I'm like, fuck yeah,
Yeah, I know. I when Portal 1 came out, people were like, "Oh my god, I made it through the whole game in like 4 hours." I'm like, "Perfect,
Yeah,
let's do it."
yes. I think a lot of times games suffer from not having an editor take a hard look at things,
Yeah.
and certainly games will always, I think, be at least in the AAA market, they're going to be subject to this perception of value by length, by time
Well,
it takes.
we can have a conversation. I think about this a lot of how game prices haven't changed
Right.
since games became a thing.
They kind of have, just in sneaky ways, but
In sneaky ways, in
yeah,
DLC kind of ways. But
yeah.
take something like Red Dead Redemption 2, for example.
Hmm.
That game is $60 if you
Yeah.
want to buy it. And that game represents thousands of hours of work
Hmm.
by an incredibly long list of people.
Yeah.
And how and this is why you hear AAA studios where it's like, oh, we only sold 14 million copies. We're out of business.
Right.
Because the cost of making a game is so high, but the cost of the actual sale price of a game hasn't increased since the 70s.
Hmm.
And that, I think that really says something.
I think that's definitely a whole episode on that, man. I've got some thoughts for
Yeah.
sure.
So I say SNK had it figured out. They were like 14 people, $300 for the game. Fuck you, pay me.
Right.
They did okay for a while.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, no, and it's the same thing with movies, right? Like, it used to be there was a small credit sequence at the beginning of the movie. Then when the movie was done, you saw maybe 20 more names,
Mhm.
and it was finished, and the movie made a bunch of money. And it was like, this movie cost us $200,000 to shoot, and it made $3 million.
Yeah.
And you cut to nowadays where the average credit sequence is 10, 50 minutes long, and you're still only paying $12 to be in that seat. It's like, Jesus, how are they doing this? Like, oh, the movie's a bomb because it didn't make $1 billion.
Right.
We're gonna hit that point where it's just no one's gonna bother making anything anymore.
Well, I hope not. Okay, two more to talk about, and I guess you're probably not going to have anything to say about them, unfortunately. But then we're going to close out with a series I know you'll have something to say about. So,
All right. I'm sorry that I've never played these two games. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
I've let you. I feel like I personally let you down.
No, that's okay. I mean, they're expensive now, I guess, so you'll have to borrow my copies. I don't know. But yeah, so I'll start with Haunting Ground, which is the lesser priced one of the two. Haunting Ground, a PlayStation 2 game from Capcom, and it is tied kind of unofficially to the Resident Evil series, because originally it was supposed to be what Resident Evil 4 turned into. So
Okay.
yeah, they kind of took the idea for Haunting Ground, which was originally going to be a Resident Evil game, and decided that they liked that idea so much it would become its own game, and that's why we got Haunting Ground. So the gist of that one is, it's going to sound familiar, but you're in a car crash. You play Fiona, this gal who's maybe like late teens, early 20s, I'm going to say, and she's going somewhere with her family. The car crashes, and when she comes to, she is in a sort of dungeon in a dog cage, and there is a scary large man with a meat cleaver chopping meat on a table near her. And
Yeah, that happens. Come on, I can count on two hands how many times it's happened in my life.
right. How many times have I woken up in a dog cage?
At least 4 this week.
That was me trying to sneak a quick drink of beer there.
That's fair.
But yeah, so it starts from there, and it's it's a creepy setting to be in. It turns out that it's like a big castle, and Fiona can't find her way out. The walls outside of the castle are very high. The only door is super locked and unable to be opened. So she kind of has no choice but to kind of venture back into the castle and try to find, any other thing she could find, like a phone or some way out, right? And the castle is populated by just a handful of people, and they're all basically bosses, but they are maniacs. So they continue to relentlessly pursue her through the castle, and there's no like basic enemy type or anything that's like walking around that you have to like dispatch of or anything. It's all just about not making too much noise so that you don't attract the attention of one of these absolute maniacs that is populating the castle, at which point, if they do discover Fiona, your only shot is to run and hide somewhere. You do befriend a dog, and it is actually this. I don't know if it's exactly the same dog, but fan canon says it's the same dog from Resident Evil 4. It's a white German Shepherd looking dog. His name is Huey. And the first time she encounters Huey, he's kind of in a bad spot, and she helps save him. And then from there, she's kind of got a friend for life. And the two of them venture through the castle together. And he's really Fiona's main line of defense. So if one of the crazy stalkers comes up on her, she can use like a little alchemy crafted trinket to kind of stun them in order to run away, or she can sick Huey on them, and he'll latch onto somebody's arm for a little bit and give Fiona a chance to get the hell out of there, and then he'll catch up shortly after. But it can be heartbreaking sometimes, because sometimes the enemies will hurt Huey, and you'll hear him yelp in the background, let out like a high-pitched, dog in pain kind of noise as you're running to safety, and you just feel guilty and shitty about it every time it happens. But yeah, it's otherwise, it's a really lonely environment. It's delightfully creepy. It's got some kind of like weird, it's got that kind of Resident Evil strange puzzle configuration kind of thing going on, where like one of the first puzzles that you encounter, for example, is like you find this weird golem standing in front of a door, or golem. How would you pronounce it?
I guess it would be Golem.
Yeah, okay.
Golem's the guy from Lord of the Rings.
Oh yeah. Is that Gollum?
That's Gollum.
Gollum, yeah, okay. So Golem is, yeah, okay, you're right. Apologies, sir.
Goddamn right.
So it's like it's a golem standing motionless in front of a door that you need to get through. And he's got like a little slot in his chest. And you have to figure out that like there are these little metal plates that you can take to a nearby like engraving machine. And you engrave a word, like a password, onto the plate. And then you go shove it into the golem's chest. And then he kind of steps aside from the door. But like it's that kind of like weird puzzly shit, right?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's good. It's got some like, I remember at the time when it came out, because I bought it when it was brand new. And I reviewed it for an old website that I used to write for, Game Assault, which is now long gone. But at the time, it seemed like it was treading into waters that gaming just did not go into story-wise. Like kind of mild rape, I guess, or like suggested rape. One of the first enemies that you encounter, the big guy that I mentioned who like has the meat cleaver, he is kind of simple-minded, like almost childlike in a lot of ways, just big and dumb, and he carries around this like filthy little like doll. And when he sees Fiona has gotten loose, he's kind of holding his doll at that time, and he looks at his doll, which is this old dingy thing, and then he looks over at Fiona, and she's young and pretty, and he kind of tosses his doll aside and decides that she's his new doll. And if you ever get caught by him and you get killed, like the screen goes dark and you hear noises, and the noises are very suggestive, right? Like I think there's multiple ways you can take it, but I took it as like there's some bad sexual stuff going on there, you know. And there's another enemy in the game who's this like kind of, it's a woman who can't reproduce, and she also can't feel pain. She can't really feel anything, and she's absolutely gorgeous, right? Like just stunning to look at, but she's super jealous of Fiona because Fiona has the ability to bear children and she doesn't. And there's this one moment where
it's fucked up.
it is fucked up. Yeah. It's fucked up. There's a moment where Fiona is asleep on a bed in a room, and this woman comes upon her in a cutscene. And while Fiona's asleep, she kind of like puts her hand over her body, and she's like running it like from the shoulders down, and she hovers over her vagina and just like has her hand there kind of trembling for a moment, and then she just like presses down on it, and Fiona wakes up, and then she like kind of slams her hand down on it a little bit because she's having a, you know, she's having a moment here thinking about how she, you know, Fiona's everything that she can't be. And it's just really, you know, that, man, that's like territory that games really don't wander into very often. And at the time, it seemed like it was kind of groundbreaking in that way to me. So, but yeah, it's kind of expensive out there in the collector's market. I think you can maybe watch eBay and find one for about $120 or so if you're.
What system is this on?
PlayStation 2.
Buy a mod chip, burn an ISO. I'm sorry. Why would you pay that much? That's crazy.
Yeah.
Plus, emulation for the PS2 has gotten really decent lately.
Has it? Okay, that's cool.
It has. If you've got a fast enough computer, if you got something that was made in the last 3 years, emulating a PS2 is pretty trivial these days.
No, that's good news.
So
yeah, definitely play it however you can play it. I mean, if you want to own a copy,
don't pay collector's prices. You're just padding a collector's pocket.
Yeah. I mean, that's what it's going to cost you now, apparently, to own a you know, legit copy or whatever. In nice condition, I should mention. You can probably find, if you don't give a shit about instruction books or original cases or whatever, you probably find one for a lot cheaper. But yeah, at that point, I don't know, just burn one if you can. But I think it's a great game, and it seems to be one that is getting a little more recognition as time goes on, as being you know, a noteworthy title on PS2. Just recently, Street Fighter V had Halloween costumes come out as DLC, and one of the I think it was Cammy had one of her outfits as Fiona from Haunting Ground.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
So I mean, there's speculation now that maybe it's either going to get like a PS2 Classics release on PS4, or maybe just maybe they might remake it, which I would love to see, because I feel like it's a cool game, and there's certainly a bigger market for horror games now than there was when that game came out in like 2005. So
yeah.
And since you mentioned that it's, you know, fairly easy to emulate PS2 stuff if you got the right machine for it, this next one is definitely one that you'll want to do that way instead of paying collector's prices, because I saw retail copies of this at the Portland Retro Gaming Expo for as much as $400.
See, and you love this game. This is one of your favorite games.
Yeah, it is. And I don't know why, because it's so tragic and like it's upsetting. But I love it. It's called Rule of Rose, and it's got kind of legendary status, and just that it's one of the most expensive PS2 games that you can find out there. It had a fairly low print when it came out. It got bad reviews, and in a lot of ways, it deserves those. The action is really clunky. I shouldn't even say action. There's not much action. It's basically Silent Hill-esque in that you're running around with like maybe a broomstick or a lead pipe or something, and that's the only way you've really got to dispatch of enemies. And the swinging of that weapon is very clunky. The hit detection can be very finicky, right? And I'm really doing a great job of selling the game here, but but where it excels is the atmosphere and the storytelling. So basically, you play a girl. I forget her name. The main character's name is escaping me at the moment. Doesn't matter. You basically are going to like a home for children, an orphanage, I guess. But it's like a blimp or an airship up in the sky. And yeah, I know it's very like fantasy, right? And there's a lot of room for interpretation and like hidden meaning and stuff in the game, and what locations and people and other things represent and what they might mean. But the gist of it is that this girl is here at this place for children where there seems to be very few adults around, and the children have kind of run wild, and they're very mean to her, and they pick on her a lot. And you find out that, you know, there's more going on than meets the eye here, of course, and there's a greater story that's very sad and depressing. It has a lot to do with how these kids convince this girl to kill her best friend, which is her dog. And yeah, it's just like very tragic and sad, and I don't know I don't know why it stuck with me, but it just did. Like, there are moments in the game where it blends, like the line between what's real and what's fantasy blurs in like the best ways. And one of my favorite moments from the game, just to give you a quick peek of it or an example of that, is you need to find a certain room, and as you're walking down the halls of this, it's very much like a old train car that you would see from like 100 years ago, right? Where there would be like very deluxe with like rooms and stuff and like carpeted hallways and that kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
Because I don't think I said this yet, but it's supposed to be like 1920s, 1930s ish, somewhere there, right? And as you're walking down this hall, you see a butterfly. It's a blue butterfly that is just in the hallway for some reason. And that's very odd, right? Because you're up in the sky and there's not any kind of insects or things like that around up there. So you're following the butterfly down the hall. And as you're following it, it splits into two butterflies. And it's like, oh, wow, okay, that's kind of unexpected. You keep following the two butterflies, and then they both split into four butterflies, and then they keep multiplying, and eventually you keep chasing them around corners and stuff and down the hall, and this really great soundtrack plays in the background, you know, very string instrument driven, classical kind of music. And there's just this like kind of wonder and fantasy about it, mixed in with like dread and you know, fear of these creatures that are kind of lurking around the place that you run into when you seem to be alone and isolated and vulnerable. And then there's also themes of like really fucked up stuff, like one of the adults on the ship is taking advantage of a girl who is terminally ill, and he's, you know, sexually abusing her, but he's also like her only caretaker, and it's just very, you know, very, very heavy adult shit. So the kind of ground that is you know, like kind of perfect for horror genre, you know, I guess. Yeah. So yeah, that's Rule of Rose. You know, it's ridiculously expensive. I won't try to tell you that it's worth the collector's price tag, because that's nuts. But I mean, I have seen people buy that game to play it on their YouTube channel and stuff, and I would assume.
Gosh, really?
Well, my assumption is that they're buying it and then just selling it again after they're done with it, right? So, you know, whatever. If you can get a copy, however you do it, and, you know, however you want to tackle it, Hoss, just, you know, give it a shot sometime if you are looking for a game with cool atmosphere. And there you go. That's Rule of Rose.
Well, all right.
Yeah. So
I'm sorry, I was sorry I was so quiet during this. I got nothing to add on these. I really don't.
That's okay. Yeah,
I'm such a fake gamer girl.
Well, it makes me feel like a blowhard sitting here, like going on about these games. You know?
Oh, please, no. I've gone on too much about fucking movies that are worthless.
Not at all. No way. We've only talked about good stuff on this show.
You sat through Basket Case on my recommendation.
Fair enough. So I know you're going to have something to say about Castlevania.
Symphony of the Night you're talking about.
Well, yes, because it is my favorite of those games. I've got more to say about the series in general, but yeah, that one in particular is near and dear to my heart. I think it bounces between that and The Last of Us and maybe one or two other games for the title of like my favorite game of all time, depending on when you talk to me. This time of year, oh yeah, my favorite game of all time is Symphony of the Night.
You know, so fun trivia fact, not my favorite Castlevania game by far.
Really? Mm-hmm. That's not fun at all. That makes me kind of hate you.
Rondo of Blood is my absolute favorite.
That just came out on PlayStation 4.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, I picked it up, actually. I've not to steal your thunder here. That's the first time I've played the original Rondo of Blood. I had the PSP collection years ago with
Oh,
the
the
remake.
3D remake. Ugh.
Yeah. I know this version seems so much cooler than that one.
Yeah.
I really like this PS4 version, man.
Well, good. I mean, it's a great. Now, Symphony of the Night. So I own the original Black Label copy of that game. I bought it when it came out. I pre-ordered it, which is weird
Nice.
considering it was the '90s.
Right.
But yeah, I got it as soon as it came out and played the bejesus side of it. And actually, at the time, what it was is my friend Jeremy and I would take my PlayStation over to his house, and we would play games. So I would play a little bit, he would play a little bit, and we'd trade off. And to this day, on my PlayStation memory card, I still have I think 198% completion for the castle.
You noob.
I know, I'm so lame.
Everybody thinks you can max it out at like 2000.2%. You can actually get that baby up to 212%, I believe, if you want to.
Really?
Yeah.
I just remember the first time we were playing it, and like we thought we were so close to the end, and then the castle went upside down. We were like, "Fuck!" So
that's such a great trick when that happens. I didn't know about it, thankfully. So yeah, I had the same experience. Just like
because you're looking at the percentage, and you're like, "Oh, I'm so close to 100, so close to 100."
Yeah. Yeah, and then you're like, it's this whole thing again, but in reverse. And there's that moment where you wonder, are the boss fights all the same, but just upside down? And then you come to the first room where you would fight one, and it's a new boss, and it dawns on you that it is entirely new bosses in the upside down castle.
Isn't that weird?
Yeah.
You know what's funny is that like you go through and you play the game as Richter, because you can do that. You know that.
Yep.
Listen to me telling you that. Like, hey, did you know?
Not many people know this, but
going through and playing the game as Richter, you just burn through that fucking game. There's just zero challenge to it whatsoever.
Yeah, you use the item crash with the holy water, and you just
not even that, man. Just the fact you can just jump up into places that an unpowered Alucard just can't.
Sure, that's true. Yeah.
Speaking of which, I have the new Castlevania to watch as soon as we're done recording.
Hell yeah, Netflix. I like the first season a lot. I've heard that this new season is fantastic.
I've not watched it. I'm 4 episodes deep on the new Sabrina series. So,
oh yeah,
you'll have to quite enjoying that.
No kidding.
Yeah. Plus, there's I have yet to see it, but I'm on the lookout. The producers of the film needed comic books for a scene, and they contacted our studio, and we sent a bunch of stuff over. So I'm on the lookout for a little World Monster Headquarters cameo by a couple of the guys and a couple of my friends in the studio, and I'm going to take pictures.
Sabrina.
In Sabrina, yeah.
Awesome. Very cool.
Hey, I'm a famous motherfucker. No, I'm just kidding. I'm super not. I am not. I assure you, I'm not. I know famous people. I am not one of them.
Right.
So
okay. Well, take your word for that.
Yeah, that's anyway. Yeah, Symphony of the Night, absolutely fantastic game. Much like Metal Gear Solid, it's one of those games that when it came out, it didn't have a tremendous amount of marketing behind it. Mm-hmm. But once it came out, the game took off like gangbusters. Metal Gear Solid obviously far surpassed anything Castlevania Symphony of the Night.
Right.
Whatever do, but it was a very well regarded game at the time. However, at the time, no, I should take that back. It's since gone on to be an incredibly well regarded game. At the time, there were many magazines that were lining up to lambast it for its dated visuals, as they called it.
Really?
Because it wasn't 3D.
See, I've got my story is actually the complete opposite of that.
No. There were plenty of magazines like Game Fan. Was more than happy to talk about how amazing it was, but there were people in the press at the time that were like, "What is this 16-bit shit?" Where's my crudely constructed polygon people?
Sure. Well, they had that with the Castlevania 64 game.
Yeah, have fun with that bullshit.
Yeah. Although I will say the intro for Castlevania 64 is still near and dear to my heart. I love that with child Dracula playing the violin.
The violin, yeah,
Yeah,
it is pretty cool.
But yeah, Symphony of the Night, actually, the way that I found out about that game was through a magazine called PSM, the unofficial PlayStation magazine of the day. And they had given that game a 5 out of 5. And it was the cover story for their second issue, which I still have sitting in the closet right next to me. And they were in love with it. And I had played other Castlevania games and stuff, but it wasn't like new Castlevania's coming, I gotta get that. Like, no, it wasn't on my radar at all had it not been for that magazine. So when they started gushing about it, and then they dedicated a whole tips and tricks section to it, they put a little pull-out card stock thing in there with all the spells and the castle map and stuff. All of that was in there, and it was like they just went whole hog on that game, and they sold me on it. So yeah, I picked it up, and while the graphics weren't immediately striking, the art style was right. Like the way that they present the game made up for the fact that like the visuals were a bit dated compared to like what you were kind of used to seeing gaming trending toward in that day, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like for instance, when you first control Alucard, there's that great scene of him kind of not running, but like walking super fast through the forest with like that, what do you call it? Like a shadow trail kind of trailing behind him.
Yeah. Super shadows.
Yeah. And he's like rushing toward the castle, and he jumps and slides in just as the gate is closing or the drawbridge is closing.
Before he loses all his powers.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. But then you walk into the castle, right? And it's dark at first, and you're just like fighting a wolf or two. And then the whole thing lights up and the music starts. And from there, it was just like, this is great. Like it had me there. And then, you go meet Death, and he sounds really cool. And the other thing too about this game is it landed when I was hot for vampires, right? Like there was a kind of a vampire renaissance in the late 90s, where you had Anne Rice's novels, Interview with a Vampire, and all the ones that came after it.
Yeah.
Like they were a hit, and the movie came out with Brad Pitt and Tom Cruise, and that movie was a hit, and I loved that movie. I had the poster for that movie hanging on my wall for years. And so, like this whole kind of like it touched on that. It touched on my love of like gothic kind of stuff, even though I wasn't like a goth kid because my dad would not put up with me looking like that. Like I love that. Like my high school crush was a goth chick, right? Like I just, heavy metal, all that stuff, right? It just spoke to me. So this game was like, it was everything to me. And the music was so good. Oh my God. Like at the time, I didn't have the music soundtrack on disc. I would buy that sometime later. So I had just like a JVC boombox with like the speakers that would detach from the sides and stuff, right? I had like the dual tape deck in it and everything. I connected the audio from my PlayStation to that, and I just put the soundtrack on a fucking cassette tape manually. And I was, like listening to that at school or on runs or whatever, just on my tape, listening to the Castlevania soundtrack.
I did that with Soul Edge.
Oh, hell yeah.
that was my cassette tape game.
Sure. Yeah, isn't that funny, man? We sound so old now.
Well, it's the only way you had. That's it. There was no such thing as recordable CDs.
Right. Not yet. No.
And certainly those games didn't have. They weren't. It's not like you just put the game CD into a CD player and played the audio.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I mean, it did have that. Like
in those games, I should say. Other games, yes. Those particular games, you couldn't just put the disc in the CD player.
Right. You'd get that track where Alucard was like, this is a PlayStation disc or whatever, But yeah, like I didn't even have a portable CD player for some, a little while after that. I don't think I was on tapes for a while. But I got the soundtrack disc from an import store. Like it was like it was like just some website that I must have found through my fucking web TV at the time. Or it might have been from the back of a magazine. I can't remember.
So deprived. I forgot you had web TV for so long.
Yeah. But I had to get it from the soundtrack disc from a place that imported that thing, But the other thing too about Symphony of the Night in particular, I love the soundtrack so much. Obviously, right? There's the song that plays in the clock tower area. It's called "The Tragic Prince."
Sure.
It has some really good guitar riffs in there, right? Like it's a guitar driven track, which is different from like a lot of the other stuff around the castle, right? It's not all guitar driven. I'd gone on a forum at the time and I'd asked around like, hey, I love this soundtrack, like especially this song, like where can I find more music like this? You know, I was well established as a metal fan and everything, but I can only get so exposed to different bands and metal and stuff, and without the internet being what it is now, like it could be really hard to discover new things sometimes, right? You're dependent on like MTV or the radio or whatever to kind of introduce you to new music. And so somebody had responded, oh, if you like that, maybe check out this band called Symphony X.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
Yeah. And I said, oh, okay, cool. I'll check that out. And I had discovered their album. I think it was just called V, the Mythology Suite. It might be 5. I don't know. Nobody's ever said it out loud now that I think about it from the band. But I've always just known it as V, right? And it's got this cool cover art where there's 2 people standing in a robe on opposite sides of a mirror or like a window kind of, and they're looking at each other. And the one's in a black robe and he's in like a desert background, and there's another one on the other side of the mirror who's in a white robe and he's in like water, like he's standing out in the middle of the sea, right? And I was immediately like, oh yeah, that looks very, that's very fantasy kind of like gothic looking sort of imagery.
Yeah, you were like, oh, the goth chicks are gonna want me for this.
Yeah. Wait till they hear this, right? So I listened to that. They became my favorite band of all time. I have everything they've ever put out. I love that band. I've seen them many, many times. And because of Symphony of the Night and because of me discovering, that I love that soundtrack so much and kind of inquiring about more music of that sort, I found that band, and that wouldn't have happened without that game. So to me, they're like forever linked in that way,
Yeah. See, bringing it full circle, this is the kind of touching, personal stories that people tune in for.
Yeah.
No, you've mentioned multiple times that Symphony X is your favorite band of all time.
Sure. Okay.
I've never, not on here. To me personally. God,
Okay,
maybe I should listen to him. Maybe I should give him a listen.
Have you never checked them out?
I don't know, man. Maybe. I probably not. I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, the album that I mentioned is the one to try first.
I've already found it on YouTube, and I'm looking at the exact album art of which you claimed is your favorite.
Oh, so. Yeah. That was the first album of theirs that I'd ever listened to, and it's my favorite. Although they've got some great stuff. I prefer the stuff from the 90s that they put out over the more modern stuff. The more modern stuff is a bit hit and miss with me, but I still like a lot of it. And they're forever my band, Yep. That's them.
Reminds me of the theme song for the anime. Oh gosh, why am I drawing a blank on it now? Attack on Titan.
I've never watched that.
You should listen to the theme. Hold on, I have to find you a link. The season 1, well, even season 2, on Titan theme song. You will nut over the theme song of that. If Symphony X is your jam, you're gonna be like, what anime? What is this Brave New World? All right.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm putting this in the show doc. You have to listen to this later.
Okay, yeah. Great. I'll check that out. I want you to talk a little bit more about Rondo of Blood, since you said that is your favorite one. You didn't really touch on it much. I feel I don't know.
What else? What can I add?
When did you play it for the first time, and like what was your history with the series before playing that?
The important point out, Rondo of Blood was a Japanese only release.
Mhm.
for the PC Engine CD-ROM
Mhm.
and TurboGrafx or Turbo Duo over here. We never got it in the States. It was only a Japanese release. And I knew about it because I had a Turbo Duo. I'd heard about it. It's like, this is the greatest game ever made. It was in gaming magazines. I never got a chance to play it.
Yeah.
So Symphony of the Night Symphony of the Night came out. And the first stage of Symphony of the Night is the last stage of Rondo of Blood.
Right. Yes. It
Yeah.
says final stage too when you load it up in Symphony of the Night. Yeah.
Right. Symphony of the Night is the literally direct sequel to Rondo of Blood. And so it's based off that. I was like, and you kind of discover like, you know, back then it was like magazines, you know, you really don't know too much about it. It
Right.
wasn't until the late 90s when emulation started becoming a thing. And you know, by that time, Rondo of Blood had become this mythical thing. Even back then, copies of it were fetching $80, $90 if you had a copy domestically.
Which was a
now
lot
back then. That was like unheard of. It's like no one would ever pay that much money for a video game.
Right.
But you know, once emulation became a thing, so it was the late 90s, probably early 2000s when I first played it. Because by that time we had the emulator Magic Engine. Let me just look it up. Like, when did that first come out? 1997 is when Magic Engine first hit. So that's probably about when I first played it. Okay. And that was a PC emulator. It was the first ever PC Engine emulator that could play CD-ROM games. So that's when I first played it. And so we're talking like I played this. When did Symphony of the Night actually come out?
97, I believe.
97. So I probably played it only about a year after I played Symphony of the Night, maybe even less than a year after I played Symphony of the Night. And so I'd come off Symphony of the Night, and Symphony of the Night is very Metroid kind of style. I'm much more of an action gamer. Symphony of the Night was a lot of fun. Don't get me wrong. I loved it. But I at the same time as I bought the game, I bought the step-by-step like hint book that was available on the shelf right next to it.
Yeah.
I would not have made it through that game without that book. Whereas Rondo of Blood, very much more straightforward. Much more akin to Castlevania 1 or 3. And I just enjoyed it because even to this day, like multiple branching paths. So you're on the first stage. If you go this way, you fight this boss. You go this way, you fight this boss, and that leads you through different places, and you could save your progress and everything else. And it was just, from a gameplay standpoint, it just resonated with me more because it was less of the exploration aspects and more of the straightforward linear stages.
Sure.
However, you could play as multiple characters. There were multiple branching pathways. You could revisit stages to increase your completion bonus. And it was just a really amazing package. Same way Symphony of the Night was, right? Like what basically when it boils down to is I'm comparing two absolutely amazing top tier games, and I'm just saying that this one's the one I prefer, right? They're both amazing games. They're both games I enjoyed immensely. But Rondo of Blood, long term, let me put it like this. My PC Engine is still hooked up to my television set to this day.
Awesome.
And the CD-ROM drive either changes between Gate of Thunder, which is one of my favorite games of all time. Our theme song is actually from that game. Yeah. It changes between that and Rondo of Blood. That's pretty much it.
Nice.
So
nice. Yeah, I love it when games endure like that. You know,
it's infinitely replayable. Symphony of the Night can be, right, if you want to put the time in. Well, Rondo of Blood is very pick up and play.
Sure. No, I won't disagree with that. I replay Symphony of the Night almost every October, honestly. Not every year, but definitely more years than I have not. I will replay Symphony of the Night.
I should go back and revisit it at some point. I have not played it all the way through since the first time. I bought the Xbox Live Arcade release.
Okay.
When it came out. Weird trivia fact, that one's notable because it was the first ever Xbox Live Arcade game to be larger than the mandated 50 megs that Microsoft had put in place.
Yeah, I remember those days.
Yeah, that was a big deal back then.
Yeah.
I bought it, and I never played through it or anything like that. I just bought it.
I have that
Thought I
version
sure had it.
too. I have that on my Xbox One right now. It's installed, ready to play. It's not a bad way to revisit the game if you don't have the original PlayStation version, or if you don't have access to a PlayStation console, a PlayStation 3, or a Vita, or a PSP. Basically, they put it out as a PS1 classic. So if you can't play that version of it or the disc version of it, the Xbox Live version is the next best version. The one that just came out on PS4 is actually not as good as those
Yeah,
versions.
you do not get the original voice acting. That was a very hot button issue.
Yeah, not even just that. Like that's a big one for me, honestly, right? Because like everybody knows that line, like, what is a man? You know, a miserable little pile of secrets.
Yeah.
Yeah. And fun side note here, my first metal band that I joined, we sampled that, and that was part of our intro that would play as we were walking onto the stage.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was Dracula saying that line and repeating it. It would loop while we had like this kind of ambient space track from Quake 3 that would play, along with a few other like sampled noises and stuff to kind of spice it up a little bit. But it was supposed to be like this kind of ominous statement about, you know, mankind as we were coming out to the stage. But yeah,
So edgy, so edgy.
I know. Hey man, it's metal. So yeah, aside from just the new translation and of course as a result the different voice acting and stuff, a lot of the various game sounds are different. Alucard's death scream, he sounds way shittier in the
Really?
yes.
Doesn't have the.
Oh yeah, like he sounds kind of like otherworldly in the original version, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and he doesn't sound. He sounds wimpier in this version.
Must be a voice acting thing, like they lost the rights to the original performances or something.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because like there are other examples too. Like some enemies sound different. Like you know the axe lords, the green and blue guys who throw the axes that kind of boomerang out and back. They have like a real distinct sound that they make when they throw their axes and when they're
because they go
dying.
Ah! Yeah,
it's like kind of thing as they're throwing it, and then when they die, it's like whoa. Well, that's different in the PS4 version that just came out as well.
So arbitrary. It's like when George Lucas just couldn't stop fucking tinkering with Star Wars.
Yeah, it's weird, right?
It's like we're just gonna change Ben Kenobi's scream. Why? I don't know. It's Tuesday.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so strange. Like I don't understand some of these changes, these differences, if it's like an audio compression issue of some kind, or if they did like legitimately make this a conscious effort to replace these sounds for unknown reasons. I don't know what it is, but the version that just came out on PS4 is not as good. And if you're gonna play Symphony of the Night, that's not the way to play it. And it makes me question whether or not the version of Rondo of Blood is faithful. Because if things are different in Symphony of the Night, well, are they different in Rondo?
Well, you know,
well?
because all the voice acting is in Japanese in Rondo. What little there is. Although I take that back. The beginning is in German.
Yeah, okay. That's the same.
With Japanese subtitles.
Okay.
Well, at least on my disc.
All that's the same. No, actually, there is voice acting over the animated cutscenes where Richter and Maria have met. Where I believe they're speaking English. I just played through it a couple nights ago. I'm pretty sure.
Well, then that's honestly, who gives a fuck? Because it was all in Japanese originally. So
sure,
not a problem for you.
No, but I mean, it begs the question.
You, unlike me, actually knows what the hell's going on.
Right. But I mean, like, there's a part of me that wants to make sure that I'm playing a version that's not inferior. Like, I don't mind extra voice acting in English versus Japanese. Like, that's not a problem for me. But like things like, you know, the examples I just cited for Symphony of the Night, if that also applies to Rondo of Blood, then like that kind of bugs me because I want to know that I'm playing the cool version that people are used to hearing, you know?
Oh, well, I mean, the used to hearing would be the intro being in German with Japanese subtitles.
That's faithful.
And then every single conversation in the game being in Japanese. That's the original.
Right. But you know what I'm saying about like the enemy sounds and stuff like that too, right? Like I won't know.
I guess I can't speak for it. You're probably best off just watching a YouTube playthrough and comparing.
Sure. Yeah, but I mean, it seems like a decent enough package. Like the Symphony of the Night changes bother me, but honestly, I bought it for Rondo of Blood. So, and the time that I spent playing that, it was great. I really like it. I feel like it's aged, very well because while I never played the original, I'm having a great time with it now, and it holds up. And
Yeah, it's a fun game. The fact that it has save states or save points is a big help.
yeah, totally, totally.
That's a hard game. It's a real hard game.
I liked that PSP remake of it, and I'd heard that the original was an unlockable on that PSP game. But I never beat the PSP game, and it didn't. There was something about it. It didn't control, like Symphony of the Night, and I kind of didn't like it as much for that reason. There's like a real distinct march that Richter has that now that I've played the original Rondo of Blood, like they fucked that up because he doesn't control that. I don't have that same issue with this new version. He controls great in this version, right?
Yeah. No, it's very floaty feeling in the original because I have the one for the PSP.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's very, very floaty.
I remember the music being good, but I don't know about the rest of it,
Yeah. No, it's the typical 3D problem with 2D animation games like that. Obviously, they were done in a lower frame rate, but you could interrupt the animation with other movements. Whereas on 3D games, a lot of times the way they would write the animation cycles, the animation cycle would have to complete before you could change the movement or direction of a character.
Sure.
So, anyway, yeah, there's that.
Yeah, no, that's a good assessment of it, I think.
All right, we're coming up on almost 3 hours of this, so I gotta cut it short. It's getting late over here for me.
Goodness, yeah. No, I didn't have anything else to cover. We did everything I wanted to, and then some. So
cut it short at 3 hours.
Yeah. Good grief! I hope everybody listening has enjoyed it, though. A couple of, especially me, blowhards going on here for.
Oh yeah, this is our October season. Definitely, we blew the doors off. We were like, fuck it, let's do it.
Yeah.
So there you go.
A quick apology too. I don't think we originally intended to do 3 parts,
No,
or even
we absolutely not.
No, or even to have especially to have part 2 and 3 kind of release at the same time, as I suspect they will, because I haven't edited the part 2 yet, and as of the time of this recording, it's not live yet. So these 2 are going to be pretty back to back, I think, and you're going to be like, huh? But it's just because we literally recorded them 2 days apart. We started this on Wednesday of this week, and now it's Friday, and we're finishing it up. So that's just kind of how it goes sometimes. I know you got sick for a little while, and I was busy with other things at another period. So it just took us this long to get around to finishing it. But
yeah, I was sick, and you were like, sorry, motherfucker, I'm off doing cool shit.
Yeah, I'm off being healthy.
Yeah, I was like, yeah, throw your ability to breathe in my face. Why don't you?
Yeah. Oh man, if I can make it through.
Look at me, Tim. We're running.
Yeah. Oh, what's going on, Tim? Oh, sorry, just gotta catch my breath. I was outside running in the fresh air.
Yeah.
Ooh, what's going on, bud? All right. Well, hey, I guess I'll take us out. Thanks everybody for listening, and this has been fun talking about all this shit. I don't know what we'll cover for the next episode, but sometime in
probably
November,
video games.
Be back. Probably.
Games. Yeah, it'll be games. I got a good feeling.
What if it just descends further into madness and we just spend an entire episode talking about comics next time, and then the time after that it's like a whole episode on something even farther removed from video games,
Well, we'll start thinking about changing the name of the show.
Yeah. Bare metal babbling.
Yeah, oh hey, there you go. Bare metal something. Bare ass gaming. Bare ass metal.
Yeah.
That's it.
All right. Thanks everybody. We'll catch you next time.
All right, see ya.